Hello, everyone. Welcome to When Shooting is Life podcast, episode one. Today, we have a very special guest by the name of Christian Khang, aka Instructor King from North Carolina. He is a master fire instructor and the founder of Mountain Tribe Development. How's it going, man?
Hey, it's going good. How are you doing, Coop?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to have you here today, and I appreciate you for being my first guest.
Thanks,
Uh,
thanks, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. So before we officially begin this podcast, just five random question. Just give out a short answer. You don't have
Mhm.
to go into details. Are you ready?
Sure, let's go for it.
All right, red dot or iron sights?
So I transitioned to Red Dot. This is probably maybe like 2016, 2017. That's when you started seeing them a little bit more. So I gave it a try, right? I gave it a try, and I liked it, right? I really liked it. You didn't. There's a lot of people who are anti Red Dot. They're like, oh, the battery's going to die, or the optics are going to fail. Um, No, but there's definitely a huge advantage going the red dot, to the point where most of your higher level shooters, they're all running red dots nowadays. The analogy that I like to use is that just look at what the U.S. military is using. Okay, so they're using aim point optics, they're using EOTech optics, they're using Trijicon. So they're running electronic optics on their fighting rifles, right? So if we're running electronic optics on our fighting rifles, then why not run them on our handguns as well, right? So that increases that fighting capability. It makes you better with a gun. So why not? Why not?
All right, all right. Uh, Pineapple on pizza or not?
Oh no, no, absolutely not.
Okay.
Disgusting.
Oh man, I love pineapple on pizza, man.
Oh, killing me.
It's pretty
I
good.
I mean, I don't lose respect for people who like pineapple on pizza. It's just to me, it just don't belong there.
All
That's
right.
just me though.
Okay, next question. Would you attend to a P. Diddy party?
No.
Okay.
No, 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 no. No.
All
That'd be
right,
way too gross.
this is one of my favorite question that I love to ask people. Do you believe in aliens?
Woo! Not when I was younger, but oh man, if you follow like the US government stuff, so uh it's a whole rabbit hole where the US government they've acknowledged there's something out there. They're not saying that's aliens, maybe it's a natural phenomenon, but there's some weird freaky stuff out there, and it's documented. Yeah,
Okay,
so US Navy, US military, they have officially acknowledged there's something weird out there, but they haven't said that it's what it is yet.
okay. All right, last question. Copon or pho?
I'm a faux guy.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm definitely a faux guy.
damn. I was hoping you said copon. I love
I like
copon.
to. Oh, a good bowl is good, but man, faux just hits the spot for me.
All right. All right, well, that's just the five random question right there. So yeah, let's begin. So for those who doesn't know you, can you please provide a little bit of background about yourself and go into more details about Mountain Tribe development?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, thanks again for having me on. So, my name is Christian Khang. So I'm certified as a master instructor under the Range Master program. I know that I have that on my social media profiles, but I'm probably going to end up taking that title off because it's number one, that title, it's kind of a big title. It's kind of a very eye-catching title, which is why number one, that's why I got it. Number two, that's why I stuck it there. But then as I'm kind of just going on my shooting journey, essentially what I tell a lot of people is that you don't know what you don't know, right? And so I'm realizing that I'm okay. I'm not. I would hardly call myself a master of anything quite just yet. I'm a pretty decent shooter, but some of the best high level shooters I know with the same qualifications certifications, they don't put that there. They don't advertise themselves like that. Also, when I took the master certification, some of the shooters there, I mean, they were okay, all right. And if an okay shooter can pass and get that title, is it the most brag worthy kind of thing? But yeah, so certified as a master instructor under Range Master. I have multiple challenge coins from Range Master for running casino drills, for Top Shot as well. I also have completed. I like to take a lot of other training, so um, I teach a lot of the basic stuff too, intro to handgun stuff, even the concealed carry stuff. A lot of instructors, when they get very high level, they don't like teaching the basic stuff, but I've actually put a lot of effort into my curriculum for just teaching intro to handgun and even like concealed carry stuff. And so I enjoy teaching that as well. So my little firearms training group, we are called Mountain Tribe Development, because there's all the buzzwords. Everybody is tactical. Everybody is dynamics. Everybody is all these other all the overused terms, right? So I wanted to come up with something that kind of accurately described who we was, who our group is, right? It's also that running joke where all these Asian dudes always keep on picking like Ronin, samurai, ninja tactics and stuff, and like
Yeah.
none of you guys are Japanese.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to sell myself as some kind of Japanese Bushido thing. But no, Mountain Tribe, it reflects my heritage. It reflects us, we were mountain people, right? Living up in the mountains, right? And development part is that, we teach shooting, but on top of that, we also develop new training, new ways to teach training, as well as firearms development, right? So I'm working on developing different training tools, right? So for example, like my man, I was going to grab a bunch of props. Now they're scattered everywhere. So for example, even like the packed shot timer, I have like a silencer plug for there because a lot of times people put like a piece of tape over it. Then you lose the piece of tape. So I have a plug that kind of just fits in there. It silences it so you can do indoor dry fire. I've been working on a lot of parts for the Beretta 1301. Anytime I run into just little problems like my Henry lever action rifle, I can make a little cartridge carrier. I just slap on the side and I can hold like 10 or 15 cartridges of 357 Magnum on the side of a Henry lever action. And a lot of people might be thinking, those are parts that already exist out there, but I can make it easier, I can make it cheaper, I can make it to my spec. The 1301 parts that I've been working on, I can run really fast drills with that. Um, Faster than anybody that I know of, right? I don't doubt there's people faster than me. As far as I can tell, I have record times for like the Rolling Thunder and the shotgun casino drill for my defensive shotgun setup. And what I mean by defensive being that the Clint Smith principle of fighting shotgun is something that we fight with what ammo is in the gun and on the gun. So if you were to do quad loads from a belt, like 3-gun style, yeah, you could definitely run it faster, right? So I think I currently have the top times for those drills, but absolutely people can prove me wrong. I wouldn't doubt it. But yeah, so that's who I am. And so also on the side, I teach cybersecurity. My background is I'm an IT guy. That's really what I do. I do cybersecurity stuff, and I teach cybersecurity as well. So I've got my hands in a lot of different things. I'm teaching a lot of different types of stuff, but I enjoy teaching. I really have a passion for it. A lot of people don't understand that, being good at something, but being able to teach that, those are kind of two different skills, right? You can have guys who are excellent at playing basketball, right? But does that mean they would be a good coach? Maybe some of them, but not necessarily, just all of them, right? Because being able to understand the perspective of a student and being able to mentor them, understand, how do I take some of these higher level ideas and how do I train you on how to do it, right? So just being able to teach, that's something that I've done for a long, long time. So yeah, that's pretty much me.
Okay, nice, nice. So you were talking about how you made some it, I would call it attachment for your
Mhm.
1301. Do you have do you have it on you right now so that you
Um,
could show to us?
every time, oh, okay. As soon as they say that, I don't. I have like none of my parts from my 1301 currently on it. I'm running a very weird 1301 right now.
Okay.
Every time I post a picture or video of it, it looks different because I literally just started a few weeks ago just running shotguns, right? And so there's a few instructors who are kind of upset at me that I'm posting really fast times, because a lot of them think that with defensive shotgun setups that you should you shouldn't run it so fast, but I believe that no, you should absolutely have skill. You should absolutely be able to run things faster, right? 12.47 Rolling Thunder solo. Not bad. 6.66. All right, not too bad. Casino drill with a shotgun. Yeah, I can even show you some of my workflows, right? So you can see my screen.
Nope, not yet. Let me
How
okay,
about
okay, hold
now?
on. There we go. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So essentially, what I do is I believe that one of the kind of the issues, especially in the firearms industry, is that there's a disconnect between the shooter and the engineer, right? So a lot of times we just kind of take the engineer's word or the engineer's design as gospel, right? And we say that, hey, if you modify your gun too much, you're going to screw it up, right? Which is true. Um, these are not operating parts, so this is not like a barrel or bolt or anything. This is more like an accessory, if anything else. So I can just kind of go through a workflow of how do I make this gun run faster, right? So I can just kind of design it and then I can build it to my spec and then I can just kind of fine tune it. This one is specifically designed for the Midwest Industries 1301 rail. I have another version that just fits just the standard handguard for the 1301 and it has a slightly different profile, right? And this is something that I can kind of work through and I can kind of prototype and then create a profile that I like and then I can get it custom fit, right? All in a matter of like 2 hours, right? And then I have a working part in essentially less than 4 hours, right? So that's something I really enjoy. um I'll send you the video so you can kind of post it, but I can. Whereas some people, like, the fastest time they can run a casino drill with a shotgun is like 9 seconds. 9 seconds is about the fastest time that I've seen. I can run mine in about like 6.6 seconds, right? Because I've got parts that allow me to be a little bit faster, as well as I just train and train and train, and I just run a ton of dry fire. So this is kind of the cool stuff that I do. You'll notice that I am using kind of a really funky grip, a really funky pistol grip. So this is one that I kind of customized. This one is kind of a straight 90-degree angle one. When you stick it on the Mesa tactical stock adapter, it actually tilts it forward a little bit. So it's actually more like I want to say this is like a 10, 15 degree angle when you kind of run it the way that I have it. Okay. And there's a very specific reason why I like it. Yeah. That's why I call us Mountain Tribe Development. There's a ton of these different parts. One of the tricky things that I kind of working through is number one. If you guys do 3D printing, you know that the basic license for Fusion 360, you're not supposed to sell stuff if you don't have the business license. So
I was
getting
gonna
the
ask you
business
about
license,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So right now it's just kind of designing and prototyping, and then just giving it to guys that I know, getting feedback from them, right? And then when I'm ready to go into full production, getting the proper licenses, and then finding better manufacturing methods. 3D printing is okay. I wouldn't necessarily bet my life on 3D printed parts. So I would like to get better manufacturing processes so we can actually push it to full production. So that's I I don't yeah, I can go on this for like hours. That's kind of the basic stuff of what are the things that I'm working on.
How did your business started?
Yeah, yeah. So gosh, I was like 20. I started 2017 is when I started. And so I was only 25, 26, and I was like, you know what? I want to become a firearms instructor. I think that'd be pretty fun. So I took an NRA basic pistol instructor, I got my North Carolina concealed carry instructor certification, and then I just started teaching. Right, so just go out to the community and say, hey, I'm teaching concealed carry classes. So I had been reading like as much as I could, like Masad Ayub. I have been reading. I think I've been reading some of the stuff from Tom Givens, a lot of like the defensive handgun, concealed carry kind of stuff, and so I was kind of getting more perspectives from people who were more respected in the industry. That's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. Just is that the bar for calling yourself an instructor is very low. Okay, essentially anybody can do it, right? There's not like a international body that certifies instructors, right? Anybody can kind of call themselves an instructor, right? So you get a wild range of instructors who are known and respected, and known and unrespected. Okay, so that is to say that I started off in a good place, right, with some of the more well known and respected instructors, um, and then just kind of starting from there, I started taking more classes, and I'm mostly YouTube and book taught at the time. Okay, so starting for those first like 4 or 5 years, right, just practicing based off like YouTube videos, watching like T Rex Arms and like Warrior Poet Society and things like that, and then just kind of learning from there because those are some of the bigger guys in YouTube, right? And so as I'm watching those videos, I'm starting to learn a little bit more about my shooting. My shooting's getting better. And then I start taking classes, right? So I've been teaching for like 2, 3 years. I start taking classes. I start taking classes with like a lot of the local guys. So local guys who are like a lot of police guys. Some of the guys in North Carolina, like there's a group called Recondo. Their head instructor, he is former Secret Service. Um, and there's another there's a bunch of different smaller local guys. And so as I'm taking these courses with them, I can outshoot the instructor, right? So I'm getting this really big head that, yeah, I'm hot stuff. I can outshoot these other instructors who have been, they've been police for like 20, 30 years or Secret Service guys, right? Like I can outshoot them. So I'm getting this real big head. Okay. And then I take my first range master course, right? Because at this point, I'm like, all right, let's take some higher level courses for bigger names. Okay, so range master comes up a lot, right? And so for those of you who don't know what range master is, range master is a program started by Tom Givens. Tom Givens, he is one of those nationally known instructors, and he's probably one of the most well-respected ones in terms of just teaching instructors and getting instructors certified, right? He has an incredibly well respected program. Okay. When we're talking about the gun instructors people know are going to be who's on YouTube, who's got the most followers, right? However, when you actually talk about who do those instructors know, right? There's going to be more niche instructors, and those more niche instructors, they are the actual like high level ones, right? So you've got your social media popular ones, and then you've got the ones who are actually like really good, right? Their social media is not as big because they're not as flashy, and they don't have YouTube video crews, right? But then in the industry, who are the truly respected instructors, right? Because like guys we talked about, like you've got like Ben Steger is a big name, like Tim Herron's a big name. Um, um, there's also going to be like Modern Samurai Project. We got Scott Jedlinski. There's those guys like that, right? Who are more recognized, who are doing trainings for federal government, for police, state, and local defense guys. So anyway, that is to say that I kind of wanted to bring that skill level up, right? And so I wanted to get more instructor certifications that more much higher or much better recognized, right? Because at this point, I only have like a NRA instructor certification. The NRA instructor certification is kind of the joke of the instructor world because if you can stay awake for like 2 or 3 days, you can become an NRA certified instructor, right? It's not really that hard. Okay, it's not the worst instructor certification, but it's very basic. Okay, yeah, and so I go take range master, and the people they're actually really good, right? And I realized like I thought my skill was here, but then I realized no, my skill is way down here, right? Even though I'm out shooting 30-year experienced SWAT guys and I'm out shooting Secret Service instructors, right? No, my skill's down here. Okay. And these other guys, they're also local instructors and their skills like right here, right? And so that kind of really opened my eyes that, for a long time I have been a big fish in a small pond. Okay. And that kind of really pushed me to push my skill level up a lot. So that's kind of where I've gone from there. So um, what I'm working on right now is, kind of pushing that skill ceiling. So Ku's been really pushing me to do USPSA. So I've been practicing for that, training for that. My goal for 2025 is to get at least A class in 2025. That's what I'm hoping for. A lot of people don't appreciate the shooting class rankings, right? Because when I say somebody is a C class shooter is better than like 75% of all other gun owners. A B class shooter is easily better than like probably 80, 90%. A class is better than 90, 95. And then you get to like master, grandmaster, you're talking about like the 0.1% of skilled shooters. So even a C class shooter easily will outshoot 75% of people. If I were to do a qualifier right now, I think I'd be a high C, probably. But Ku, I already know that you're a high B. You're like pushing A right now.
Yeah, yeah, I try, man, but to be honest, I suck, man. But I'm still learning. I'm still learning. Yeah. Hopefully I was very close to A class by like 2%. And then and then I
Oh,
went to this classifier match and
uh-huh.
then I just messed it up. I messed up every single stage and then it dropped
Mm,
me back down really bad. So I was like,
mm.
ah, crap. I'll just try again next year. So yeah, so are there any specific instructor that you enjoy watching and learned a lot from?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have been watching a ton of Ben Stager lately, and that's I haven't really been watching a lot of competition shooting stuff. The reason is because I have I'm a very kind of like ADHD type of personality where I kind of lock onto something and then I make that like my focus. So when I was doing my shotgun stuff, I was hardcore on shotgun for like a solid 2 3 weeks. My wife was like kind of pissed at me because like every moment I had, I was dry firing shotgun. Okay. So yeah, I've been recently watching a ton of Ben Sager, some Tim Heron stuff, some Matt Prenka stuff. Um, that also Billy Barton. I think it's Billy Barton. It's BB. It's definitely Billy. I can't remember if it's Barton or not, but he's a grandmaster over here in North Carolina as well. He's over in Charlotte, so I've been watching a lot of their stuff too. Um, yeah, so those are some of the guys that I've been learning a lot from. Billy says this really interesting thing that get advice from like all the guys you shoot with, but if you're getting advice from B class shooters, you're getting B class advice. I'm like, man, you know, that's really true. There's you can learn some really solid fundamentals, but if you're trying to push to like A class or master or grandmaster class, man, that comes down to how fine tuned can you be, how very consistent can you be, um some things that I would kind of explain to people who there are guys who shoot, but there are guys who understand shooting, right?
Mhm.
And we both know this. So we know plenty of guys who like to set up some paper targets and they kind of run around a little bit and wear like their vests and their tactical gear set up, which is that's great. That's great. Me and my friends, we do that from time to time too. We'll go out there with night vision and lasers, right? We'll do plenty of the tactical stuff too. But what truly separates those who know how to shoot from those who just own guns is, especially their understanding of the mechanics of the firearm, right? So this is one of the tools that I've been using. This is the Ace VR handset, right? So this works with the Quest 3. So you can actually shoot in VR with it. Okay. So this is not for Ku, right? Ku's already pushing A class, but this is for all our viewers, right? Right. So one of the big things is people don't understand is number one how to pull that trigger. Okay, depending on who you ask, some people might say it's more correct to say press the trigger rather than pull the trigger, right? And so having a good trigger press for example, right? If you go to a shooting range, they're going to have these targets, what they call a diagnostic target, where it has a pie chart, right? And you got like a center circle. And if you miss that center circle and you end up in the other parts of the pie, it says you're using too much finger or too little finger, or you're jerking the gun, or you're anticipating the shot, right? And you talk to anybody who's high level, they're like, no, that's all BS. That's not what it is, right? Um, you guys should go to my Instagram, my Facebook page, right? I have one where I'm like, okay, all that's BS, and I'll hold a gun and I'll shoot it upside down with my pinky to show that yeah, all of that's BS.
Let's check it out. Overall, I'd say not too bad. The thing about these diagnostic targets is that a lot of them just give really bad information. They're just incorrect in their assumptions that they're making about your shooting. What I like my students to do is I like to focus on what we need to do correct instead of focusing on what we're doing incorrectly. It's got to be two main things: making sure that we're keeping our sights aligned all the way through as we're squeezing, pulling that trigger. That's going to be the key thing to actually help us be accurate. Now, what we can do is we can get really good at this by dry firing, and then we can just practice pulling that trigger gently without disturbing those sights.
Under 2 seconds. Okay. So I could get about like 1.95, right? So that's under 2 seconds from concealment, 6 shots at 21 feet, all in the size of something smaller than a sheet of computer paper. Okay. And that involves just slapping that gun like crazy. Okay. But you got to know how, right? Um, Here's a pro tip. It has to do with your fingers and how you're gripping the gun. Most people don't realize this, but the reason your shots are going off, a lot of people say it's you're anticipating the shot. You're anticipating the shot. Sort of. Sort of. What's happening is you are actually jerking the gun, not with this finger right here. It's actually these fingers right here, right? Because if you were to make a grip like this is one of the things you always do in our classes, right? I always tell people hold an invisible gun, right, and then just start jerking the trigger, right? And then what you'll notice is that as you're doing this, these guys want to move too, right? We call that a sympathetic motion, right? And it's actually these guys right here that is throwing your shots low left, right? So as I'm shooting, right, you tend to have most people tend to squeeze the whole gun, right? It's squeeze, 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 okay? And it's very subtle, okay? It's very subtle. You don't realize you're doing this, but you're kind of hanging onto the gun for dear life and you're squeezing the whole thing. And so right-handed shooters, you're going to be shooting low left. Left-handed shooters, you're going to be hitting low right, okay? But that just happens. Even for me, if I'm going real fast, I'm still hitting low left, okay? Because that means that I'm not using enough support hand. That's typically what that means for me, that I'm not crushing with my support hand. So crush with your support hand, right? Typically crush with your support hand. A lot of people say that hold the gun with your dominant hand about as much as you hold like a hammer. If you're swinging a hammer to bang a nail, right? But I've been listening to more like Ben Steger, Hwansik Kim stuff, and Hwansik Kim talks about actually just go as light as you can on this hand, right? And when I'm shooting, I used to not be able to go faster than like a 0.2 second split, meaning that shot to shot, right? Bang, 0.2 seconds, bang, right? Which is pretty quick. But the really fast guys they'll do like 14, 15-second splits, which doesn't sound like much, but once you kind of understand that cadence, it sounds crazy fast. I'm able to do that now because if you're crushing with your dominant hand, you slow this finger down, right? Yeah. And it sounds weird, right? It sounds weird because most people don't realize. They're like, that's so easy to do. How could you get hung up on that? But when you're actually really shooting for speed, it's actually really easy to get trigger freeze, right? We call it trigger freeze, where your finger kind of freezes up because you're actually applying too much pressure with your dominant hand as you're shooting. So one of those things that's really helped is relaxing this grip as much as I possibly can and crushing with a support hand. And that's one of the things that I'm really focusing on. If you're really serious about competition, you absolutely need to understand grip. That's one of the core fundamentals that it separates the bottom from the top. It definitely does.
Yeah, I saw your build drill from concealment, and
Mhm.
man, that was impressive, man.
That was a mess. I need to record a better one. That was a mess.
Oh
That's an
man,
old video. That's like
I
2, 3 years from now ago.
There you go. 1.98 seconds. All alphas. Cutting it real close. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sub 2 second build drill from concealment.
I could consistently do it at like 2 and 2.3 something second,
Mhm.
but to consistently be under 2 second with all A's, I
I'm
can't
not
do it, man.
consistent, nerd.
It's hard, man.
I'm
So
not consistent, nerd too. That's a personal best run.
so since we're talking about the build drill, do you think the build drill is it's a good drill to see where you're at with your skills and why?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. Yeah, so just a quick review of the build drill, right? So that's 21 feet, and you are drawing from concealment, or you might be drawing from a duty rig, right? If you're like police or military, maybe you draw from like a safari land, like level 2, level 3 holster, or if you're competition shooter, right? You're drawing from a competition rig. All right. So essentially, guns in the holster, 21 feet, and you're trying to hit a target a little bit smaller than the size of a piece of paper. Okay, that's the center. Actually, let me just grab.
There we go.
This one's all shot up, right? So essentially, it's this little area right here.
Mhm.
Okay. So yeah, a little bit smaller than the size of a piece of computer paper. Okay. So that's actually pretty challenging, right?
It is.
So a pretty good shooter can do it under 3 seconds. If you're pretty good, a very good shooter can do it under 2.5, right? But like the best of the best can do it under 2. I've seen guys do it in like 1.5, 1.6. It's just
Yep.
insane how fast they can go. Um, I primarily practice that with concealed carry, right? So when I do that, right, I have to clear my shirt and then I have to draw a gun that's like at waist level, right? So it's going to be a little bit slower for concealed carry than someone with competition rig, right? Competition rig, the gun's already at your side, so you just grab the gun and then go, right? So essentially, what it comes down to is number one, the quality of that grip, okay? Because essentially, it's you grip it, and if you're going for sub 2 seconds, you grip it, you see dot C sights, and then you rip it, okay? And then now we're getting into Vince Sigger always talks about the predictive shooting versus the reactive shooting, right? And predictive shooting being that I need to rip it. Okay. So predictive shooting, I'm sorry, reactive shooting is eyes go to the target, right? And then sights come up, bang. Okay. I react to sights on target, bang. Predictive shooting is eyes on target, and then I go bang, but I need more follow up shots, right? And then if I got to get really fast hits, okay, then essentially what I'm doing is that at that point is that I am predicting where that dot or those sights are going to fall, right? Because I've got to go for a very fast time, right? So it's essentially grip it and rip it, and that comes down to how good is the quality of that grip, okay? Because if you don't have a good grip, your shot's going to be all over the place. You're not going to make all A zone hits, right? So that's kind of where the predictive shooting comes in, because that tests, what is your ability to get a good grip from the holster? What is your ability to acquire sights on target, right? What is your ability to hang on to that gun as it is firing, right? And all of those things coming together in order to accomplish a good build drill. So for those of you guys out there, it may be kind of tough to find a range where they are going to let you run a build drill. You guys, if you guys are in North Carolina, hit me up, Mountain Tribe Development, and then we'll get you set up where you can come try some build drills, right? But yeah, I think it's contextually, some guys don't like it because if you're really training for competition shooting, it's maybe not the best for competition shooting. If we're talking about defensive shooting, where that guy is threatening my life, right? Do you need to run a bill drill? Depends, right? Contextually, if you've got to put 6 shots on the guy, then yeah, right? But contextually, if you draw and that guy stops, then I stop as well, right? So that's one of the other things that I teach in my classes is that for defensive shooting, we shoot until the threat stops, okay? Which works one of two ways. Number one is if I draw that gun, right, and that guy stops, I stop, right? We shoot until the threat stops. If I draw that gun, he's not stopping, he is advancing with his deadly threat, okay? Then I shoot until he stops, right? If it's 2 shots and then he's surrendering or he's on the ground, then I stop, right? But, if it's like a big dude, right, and I have to put 6 shots in him or however many, then I go until he stops. So I think the build drill is, in my opinion, it's a good general all around test of skill. It tests a lot of really good things, but contextually depends. Okay, so yeah, so like I said, for like competition shooters, they probably don't like for you. It was a long time before you actually started like practicing build drills, right? Because from a competition perspective, you don't need to sling shicks fire 6 shots as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
That's not typically what you do on any stages. So there's really no point to practice that, right?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. But the reason why I do the bill drill is just to make sure that I guess I could shoot fast and control the recoil. Um,
Absolutely.
that and pretty much that's it. Because most of the time in competitive shooting, it's more about, you know, shooting on the move and movement and stuff more than just standing and shooting. Which the classifier you do a lot of standing and shooting. I think that's why I think that's the reason why I suck in classifier because I don't really practice standing and shooting as much as shooting on the move. Not saying that I'm good at shooting on the move, but I tend to practice shooting on the move more than standing and shooting. But yeah, I think I definitely agree with your perspective where you said that the build drill is more for self-defense because obviously you gotta um draw your gun fast and shoot fast to tell the threat stops. So yeah, I agree with you on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I lost my train of thought as you're going. Yeah, I like the build drill. I think it's a good general test of skill, but yep, just like you said, contextually, competition environment, you're not really gonna. It's not maybe not the best use of your ammo, right? Because both of us already know. Many of the people watching this probably don't realize that. Well, it's kind of obvious, but nobody talks about it.
Yep.
But all this costs a lot of money,
Yep.
right? And so each bullet that you fired, I mean, the price goes up and up and up. It does not really come down. Before you could shoot for like 10 cents per round. Now you're shooting for most people, they're shooting for like 25, 30 cents per round, right?
Yep.
So you're talking a bill drill, that's like $2,
Yep.
right? And so you're not really going to run one bill drill. You're going to run multiple bill drills, right? When I'm running my shotgun drill, I'm like, dang, that was a $4 drill right there.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, yeah. Like I add up my when I did the build drill, I did add up. It took me about I would say about like close to 300 rounds just to get one perfect run. And I'm just like, damn, dude, I'm burning through all these ammo for like this drill. Was it worth it? I guess. Just because like I could say, okay, I did the build drill, but is it worth it to keep on doing it? I don't think it is. Just because it costs too much. And I'm pretty cheap like that.
for for those of you guys watching, right, and you want to build skill, absolutely do these drills and get yourself a timer. You can do the ones on your phone. Ones on your phone, they're not as reliable because the phone's not meant to be a shot timer. Get yourself a good shot timer. They're around like $100 for a good intermediate level shot timer is like about $100, right? Well, what you can do is you can dry fire. Okay, so essentially, it took me about 2 weeks of dry fire to do a sub 2 second build drill, right? And that's like an hour a day of drawing from the holster, right, bringing the gun up, and I had one of those little laser cartridges, so that when you make one shot, you only get one shot with the little laser trainers, right? You get one shot, and then bang! I just want to make sure I was in the A, okay, and I wanted to see how much sights did I need to kind of guarantee that my first shot was in the A, right? And so draw come up, and then bang, and then I just go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, and I would just practice that motion. Come up, bang, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, and then that kind of helped me to really practice my trigger prep. Um, Actually, I really like this one because it teaches a lot, right? It teaches a lot in terms of being able to lead with your eyes. That's another really big, very important technique that eyes lead and then gun follows. And I sort of got that concept, but it wasn't until I got this and really practiced with it, I could see that, okay, while I am shooting that target over there, right, I'm getting ready to squeeze off my last shot, bang, right? My eyes are transitioning, then my gun's coming over. Okay. You probably won't be able to do this from the get go, but as you build more experience, your gun naturally follows your point of A. And then it's like, I'm looking at this target here, and then, oh, there's my dot, bang. Looking, there's my dot, bang, right? And that is that reactive shooting, right? That my eyes are leading. There's the dot, bang. There's the dot, bang, right? And that it's a lot of fun when it starts to click like that. So honestly, if you can, I highly recommend ask for one of these for your wife for Christmas. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't think my wife will give me that, man. So,
Say,
so in
say it's for the kids.
in your opinion, first question is, how long have you been using what's that thing called again?
This is the Ace VR.
Ace VR. Okay.
I have I I have used this for a total of 2 days, and it's already getting pretty dirty.
Okay.
Do you use chalk when you shoot?
Yeah, yeah, and also when I dry fire.
Trying to look for my bottle of chalk. What chalk do you use?
Dang, I don't remember. I honestly don't remember, but it's like gel, and it just dries up on your
Hmm.
hand. I forgot, but the bottle is blue.
Ah, okay.
Like you could get on Amazon for like
Yeah.
$10 a little bottle.
I tried a couple different ones. So an explanation why would you need chalk, right? So any of you guys have ever seen like rock climbers? They've got like a little bag hanging off their waist, and they have a chalk, and their hands are all white. So as you're gripping something, your hands naturally get sweaty, right? So rock climbers use it to keep their hands dry, so that way they don't fall off a mountain and kill themselves, right? Same thing happens with a gun. Even with this, even with dry firing, your hands are going to get sweaty. So competition shooters is very normal for them to use types of chalk, right? So I tried just the powder chalk, like the rock climbing chalk. It's okay. It's kind of messy. And then I tried the different types of the chalk liquid. The one that I like right now is the Petzl Power Liquid, which is a rock climbing chalk. I tried it at the Modern Samurai Project class, and it sticks better. It's just better than all the other ones that I've tried. And I think because of the MSP class, it can be kind of hard to find. It's out of stock a lot. So I know like at Big Techs Outdoors and a lot of online gun retailers, they actually sell it because of like Modern Samurai Project. Scott recommends it.
Yeah, one brand that I do remember using is from Double Alpha. I think that's their brand. I used
Mm-hmm.
that one before too. It worked pretty good. It's just that it's a little bit more expensive than the one
Mm-hmm.
that I currently is using. I mean, it's only like a few dollar difference, but it adds up if you use a lot. So, yeah, I will send you the name of it once I figure out the one that I'm using.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
So do you prefer that over regular dry fire, or do you still prefer regular dry fire over that one?
Like I said, I really am only on day 2 or 3 of using this. Okay, and I'm seeing that it's really helping me with the visual stuff, and it's really helping me with a good portion of the grip stuff. Okay. So that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that when I'm posting like these very fast drills, it's because I'm dry firing, right? And you don't need very expensive stuff. Honestly, just grab your handgun, make sure that is clear, right? Find a safe wall to point at, right? Somewhere where you know that, if I accidentally get ammunition in this gun, right? I accidentally fire a shot, can I be reasonably sure that nothing bad's gonna happen? Okay. So clear your gun, make sure there's no ammo around you, right? And try to find a safe wall if you can. Not everyone can find a safe wall. Some of you guys maybe live in apartment complexes, and that might just not be an option for you, right? So it is of the utmost important that you do everything that you can to be very safe with it, right? But essentially, you just take your regular gun and then you practice all your drills with it. And it's very surprising how well it translates. It really is. So when I was practicing my shotgun casino drill, how do you translate 12 gauge recoil? The answer is you can't. Okay. But I can practice my transition from target to target. I can practice my reloads, and I got really good at transitioning target to target. I got really good at my reloads. And then when you actually go to the range, that's actually when you practice that recoil management, and that comes down to grip. So the grip part, this is where it's good for you to get training with a good instructor. Okay, a good instructor can tell you that, yeah, I can tell your grip's kind of screwed up because maybe you are too low in the gun and you need to be higher, or maybe they can tell that your finger placement's a little wonky, right? So they can fix your finger placement and they can show you, hey, as you are drawing the gun, here's different ways of drawing the gun. Okay, there's different ways of applying pressure to that gun as well. So there are things you can learn dry fire. You can learn probably 80% dry fire, right? And all the good shooters, right? All the high level competition shooters, they'll tell you that, yeah, most of these skills you can learn them through dry fire. And there's skills like recoil management that really do require you to go live fire with it. Like I was listening to a shooting podcast, and Brandon Brennicky, I believe he's a master class shooter. But he started over here with Spec Train, which is Billy Barton's training group. Then he was at Vortex Edge, and then he's got his own company, which is I can't remember the name. I think it's Gateway.
Yeah, Gateway. Yep.
Yes. But yeah, so he talks about how there was a specific skill that he was trying to practice, right? And he was trying to practice it, and he spent about like 5,000 rounds in 1 month just practicing this one skill with how he was shooting. For most people, that's a kind of out of their reach, right? 5,000 rounds, you're talking about $300 per thousand. So that's like $1,500. Most people don't have an extra $1,500 a month just to drop on ammo. Okay. So, I mean, if you want to be a master or grandmaster shooter, that's kind of what they do. But if you just want to be like a solid B class, like I said, a solid B class shooter, they are still in like the top 80-90% of all gun owners in terms of skill. Dry fire, right? Honestly, just work on that dry fire and get training from a good instructor. Okay. Because one of the worst things to do is doing dry fire wrong, right? That you are building sloppy habits. And that video where you see me doing the sub 2 second bill, I've got a lot of bad habits there, right? Because I'm coming up and I'm doing this, I'm slinging myself forward, right? And it looks so nasty that I'm watching it now that I need to go record myself doing it better. But it's pretty bad now that I watch it, right? I got the time, but everything else was a mess. It was an absolute mess. And so I need to record a much better video of me showing, now that I progressed more as a shooter. I need to go redo some of those older videos. I need to delete them. I need to scrub them from the internet.
I think you should keep it, and then so
for my own personal reference.
Well, so that you could show the difference when you first time did it and your current one, so that you could show the viewers like what you did differently to help you become a better shooter. So I say keep it, because your old video, you still got the time and everything, which it was pretty badass in my opinion.
Thanks. I got the time, but my technique was a mess. One of the reasons is that I was practicing that before I took the Modern Samurai Project class. Okay. And I learned a bunch of stuff from that class. And that really changed how I really viewed things, especially understanding grip better. Because as I was gripping the gun there, I didn't really understand how important the support hand was. I thought I was like, oh, this hand, it's got to do something. So I might as well grip the gun. But I didn't realize that this is kind of everything in terms of that recoil control. This is really everything, and that's it's one of those things that you really don't know. Most people don't understand that, right? It's really kind of a high level shooter thing because you're a concealed carry class. They're not going to teach you that. You're a police academy or you're a military. They're not going to teach you that.
Yeah, speaking of self-defense, um, what caliber and handgun would you recommend for a brand new shooter for self-defense and why?
No, that's an excellent question. Yeah, yeah. So, you know, as we were doing a little brainstorming on this podcast, and we wanted to kind of target somebody who might be a little bit newer to firearms, right? And generally, what I recommend is I recommend 9 millimeter. Um, there's a whole history of 9 millimeter. It's a very old round. I believe first developed um, early 1900s, if not the late 1800s. So easily over 100 years old. Okay, so why are we still using handgun cartridges from 100 years ago? The answer is that our manufacturing techniques have gotten better. Our quality control has gotten better. So we've got better quality ammunition, and also the things we can do with that ammunition is much better too. Okay, and so for example, the FBI, they are pretty much they're tasked with hunting like the baddest of the bad guys, right? So if you've ever watched like Criminal Minds, my wife loves watching Criminal Minds, right? And so when we got married, she would be at home watching Criminal Minds all day while she cleaned the house and did laundry. So I'd come home, she'd be terrified of like serial killers because she's watching serial killers all day. But that's kind of what the FBI does, right? They hunt the baddest of the bad guys, and so they wanted the baddest of the baddest calibers, right? And so the FBI they moved to 10 millimeter, right? 10 millimeter is what's recommended if you are in bear country. Okay, 10 millimeters recommended for bears. And so when that happened, essentially the FBI, their agents were now doing very poorly on their shooting scores, right? Now, and some of them were even failing now. It's a fairly decently high recoiling round. So they were shooting 10 millimeter for a while. They were doing poorly with it, and so they asked Smith and Wesson, "Hey, can you got to make this a little bit lighter?" And so Smith and Wesson they took the 10 millimeter and then they shrunk it down to the 40, right? The 40 Smith and Wesson. So that's why the joke is that 40 Smith and Wesson is actually the 40 short and wimpy. Um, there's a lot of guys who say that you can actually just take 10 millimeter guns and just unmodified, just shoot 40 Smith and Wesson out of them. I don't recommend that for self defense. It's not recommended by the manufacturer, but it mostly works. And some guys say it actually works pretty well. Okay, but be careful about that. Not my hands, not my gun. So if it explodes, that's on you. All right. But yeah, so FBI they go from 10 millimeter to 40, and then after a while, the FBI they do a study. They're like, okay, we're shooting 40. Does that even matter, right? So the FBI they do a study, and they look to see of all the different police departments in the U.S., all the different calibers that they're using, how many shots does it take to stop a bad guy, right? And so they look at 9 millimeter, 40, and 10 millimeter, and 45. And essentially what they find is that they're all the same. Okay. They're essentially all the same. Federal's got a really good video. Federal, the ammunition manufacturer, talking about the different wounding characteristics. Rifles and pistols do two very different things, right? Where a pistol, it cuts. Okay. As it hits, it cuts. So essentially, if you had a 9 millimeter diameter stick, right, you stabbed a dude with it, that's kind of what a pistol is doing. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but it's kind of what a pistol is doing. Okay. So something really helpful is that, one of my instructors, Kyle is actually an x-ray technician. Okay. And so Kyle has seen a ton of people gets shot, right? Well, I'm sorry, he's seen a ton of people who have bullet wounds, and he does the X-rays on them, right? And Kyle will tell you, yeah, 9 millimeter versus a 45, versus a 40, can't tell the difference, right? Because you're talking about like that much difference. Okay, that's what pistol bullets do. Is pistol bullets cut? So if you're talking about the difference of like that much in cutting performance, it's not really much. Okay, but if you're talking to rifles, rifles are a whole different game. Anybody who's a deer hunter will tell you that the entry wound on a deer is usually very small, right? But the exit wound is very big because rifles, they hit and they dump energy. So a pistol bullet will cut, right? Pistol bullets, they go roughly about like Mach 1, about one times the speed of sound. Whereas rifle rounds, some of your faster ones, they're going closer to Mach 3. Okay. So a 9 millimeter pistol bullet weighs about 115 grains. A bullet from an AR-15 that weighs about 55 grains, which is half the weight, half the size of a 9 millimeter bullet, right? But much more damaging wounds on target because it's just dumping a ton of energy. Okay, so yeah, rifle bullets, they actually will just shred flesh, and that's what they're designed to do. They're designed to dump energy. So when it comes down to it, I recommend 9 millimeter because number one, it's the most common. So if you go to just about any store that sells pistol ammunition, you can find 9 millimeter. Number two, it holds more ammunition. Okay, so because the diameter is smaller than 40 and 45, you're going to have more ammunition in the gun. Number three is that it generally recoils a little bit less than 40 and 45. Okay. And number four is that it costs less too, right? So those are all the reasons that 9 millimeter is generally my recommended go-to. That's what I recommend for most people.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I was gonna say the same reason as you, but you already said. But yeah, I would, me personally, if anyone asked me, I would always say 9 millimeter, just because, like exactly like you said, it's more affordable. You'll have a higher capacity, recoil less. And some people might make fun of you, like, oh, quit being a little wuss, blah blah. But I think those are the type of people that don't actually train. They don't realize how hard it is to actually control 9 millimeter recoil under stress and pressure. But then once you understand um, how hard it is to control 9 millimeter recoil under pressure, then you will realize that it's easier to control 9 millimeter than 40 and 45. So yeah.
You make a really good point. There are people you can talk to who know guns, and there are people who talk about guns, right? And I kind of equate this to guys who only know about cars from watching Fast and Furious, right?
Yep.
So there are guys who only know about cars because they've watched Fast and Furious movies. And then there are guys who can rebuild an engine, who can tune an engine, who do track days, right? And those are two very different types of people, right? So you go to a guy who only knows Fast and Furious. He's like, oh, just put NOS and everything. And, the tires I have, it's just the tires that came with the car. I don't need better tires, right? But then you talk to a serious guy, like, yeah, you need to upgrade your tires, upgrade your brakes, right? And those are the more of the performance things that they would probably start with first, right? Before just dumping NOS into everything. So when somebody brings up like a caliber argument, or somebody brings up like, why red dots are bad, I immediately group them into the Fast and Furious group, where the only thing they know about guns is from movies and video games. That's it.
Yeah, or people who don't train enough, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All
You may
right.
own a car. That doesn't mean you know anything about tuning a car or
Yeah.
rebuilding an engine, right? You may own a gun. Doesn't mean you know diddly squat about shooting.
All right. All right. So beside safety, what do you think is the most important thing a new shooter need to understand before they start carrying a handgun for self-protection?
Yeah. Honestly, no, excellent question. So, especially for the new people out there, number one is get good training. I highly recommend that because most people, they don't understand firearms law. Good training will introduce you to the firearms law of your state, and the firearms law, it varies state by state, right? Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Carolina, California, everybody's going to have different laws, right? And some of them may be easier to get a firearm. Some of them are a little bit harder to get a firearm. So number one, if you get the concealed carry permit type of training, that's a good place to start for absolute beginners. I've seen some instructors say that my concealed carry class is really only for like stage two, like more intermediate level shooters. I'm like, no, 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 concealed carry class. This is, I want to learn the laws of self defense. Those people probably don't know much about guns, period, right? So if you're going to intro someone to handguns, that's a pretty good intro. Okay. But I kind of get what they're saying too, that it's a good idea to take a little bit more of an actual shooting course, because concealed carry classes, they tend to be mostly legal and like a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of shooting. Okay. So I always tell my students, take my concealed carry class, but come back, and then we're going to do some more actual shooting, understanding the holster, understanding that firearm safety kind of aspect of it. Um, yeah. So essentially, coming back to what is it that I recommend? Rephrase your question for me. It was what would I recommend for new shooters learning about like firearm safety?
Oh, I said, besides safety, what do you think
Um,
is the most important thing uh, a new shooter need to
mhm.
understand before they start carrying a handgun for self-protection?
Mm, yeah, and along with that, besides understanding the safety
Mm,
and the fundamentals, um, and understanding the legal aspects of self-defense and owning a firearm and using a firearm to defend your life and the life of people you love, I would say, what is your objective? Okay,
yes.
what is your objective in owning that firearm? Because that's going to determine, number one, the type of gun that you're going to purchase, and number two, what are you going to train and do with it, right? Firearms training is a very perishable skill. Like I said, there's a difference between car owners and people who like they really understand cars and racing. Okay, a lot of people think that because I am a gun owner, and my parents are my family and generations of gun owners, that immediately makes me qualified to talk about guns, right? But you're just a basic gun owner. Okay. That doesn't necessarily qualify you for much anything. Okay. So I would say it comes down to what are you trying to accomplish, right? If you don't care about competition, you don't care about pushing skill, then understanding firearm safety, understanding legal aspects of it, and then just having like a decent understanding of shooting, that may be perfectly fine, right? You may go to the gun range like maybe one or two times a year, and that may be okay. Okay. Um, for some people, guns are not the most important thing to them, and that's perfectly fine. Everybody's different. However, if you want to truly understand firearms, absolutely you should be getting into competition. Okay. Because now you're going from a guy who watches Fast and Furious movies to a guy who does track days, who does engine tuning, right? Who knows how to modify cars and knows what each part of that does, right? And understands, how to take a corner and how to apply brakes, right? And all these different things. That's where you kind of set yourself apart. And competition really does that. Okay. A lot of people, they kind of poo poo competition, saying that, oh, that's not realistic in terms of like using gun for self defense, right? But then you watch those guys, and what they're doing is they're doing goofy kind of, we call it range theatrics, right? They're doing kind of silly tactical stuff that actually gets back into talking about there are the popular social media instructors. We call them the Instagram gun guys. And then there are the well respected instructors, right? Who are a little bit more niche. Okay. They're much more niche. So if you're just trying to look cool for Instagram, yeah, I mean that's okay. But if you actually truly want to understand shooting, you really kind of need to follow the competition shooters, right? Because they're the ones who are really pushing techniques. Like if we're talking about like red dots on pistols, that's a competition thing, right? If you're talking about low power variable optics, which is what US military is moving to, LPVOs, low power variable optics, that is a scope that you can put at one power. You can kind of use it like a red dot. Then you can push it to like 6 or 8 power, and they can use it like a scope, right? That's a competition thing, right? And all these competition things, they really flow into the more serious tactical world of a military and law enforcement, right? People don't appreciate that. That's where a lot of these technologies originate, because the competition guys, they are pushing that skill level of what can we do with this rifle and this handgun? How can I make it more versatile? How can I shoot it faster, right? And a lot of people don't appreciate that, right? They really don't appreciate what is that cool pretend Japanese guy doing on Instagram, right? Or, what did I see in Call of Duty, especially Call of Duty? Uh, yeah. And so I would say, what are you trying to do? Okay. If you're just trying to be a safe gun owner, right, and go shoot 1 or 2 times a year, then, there's not too much. Understand your laws, understand firearm safety, and then go practice a few times if you can. But if you really want to understand guns, you definitely should be competing and taking classes from very well-known instructors because, like I said, anybody can call themselves an instructor. I called myself an instructor, and like I said, my skill was down here. I was out shooting lifetime career police and like other guys, but then I realized that, man, my skills down here. I really need to bring it up.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I totally agree with you. My opinion, um, I always tell like brand new uh gun owner to go and compete because if it takes more than just carrying a gun for self-defense, because if you're because in my opinion, you got to be really comfortable with the gun. And if you're not comfortable with the gun, if you actually get into a real gunfight, I don't think you will actually survive, or you could possibly make a mistake by shooting someone else because shooting, a lot of people don't understand that shooting under stress and pressure is harder than they think. So that's why I always tell people to go shoot competition, even though they're not good, because competition will, teach them how to shoot under pressure, and shoot faster, react faster, and then it would and make them more comfortable with handling their gun, drawing from the holster. And I think the reason why a lot of uh concealed carrier people, they don't want to compete is because they think that you have to have a race gear to compete, which is not true. You could actually go and compete with your carry gun, and there's nothing wrong with that. I compete a few match from, concealment, and there, to be honest with you, there's not much different. It's just the draw is different. That's it. But the skill set, the shooting, the movement, everything is still the same. So that's why I always tell people to, shooting competition, and also because most people like me, we don't have a place to train at where we could draw from the holster. So the only time I really get to train and draw from the holster is when I go compete at a match. And what's crazy is that at a match, at a local match, we usually only shoot, I mean, depending on which match, but then it's usually from 60 rounds to 130 rounds. And in my opinion, you will learn way more and way faster within those rounds in a competition match than you going to an indoor range and just, fire away like 300 to 400 rounds at a target. So I always tell people that, especially if you're brand new to gun, or even if you're not brand new into gun, is to just go try it. And a lot of people would be like, well, I don't, I'm not ready. You're never going to be ready, in my opinion. I don't care what your background is. I don't care if you have military or law enforcement background. You will suck when you first start, but then you have to understand that you suck first to improve. So I always tell people that. So yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Oh, absolutely. And that goes back to guys who only know cars from Fast and Furious versus guys who know how to tune engines for track days, right? Um, the guys who know serious shooting, they're running timers. They're tracking their progress, running different types of drills, right? They're doing competition, right? And so, yeah, yeah. If a lot of guys are like, oh, I don't do competition because that's not realistic because the targets shoot back. Well, okay, there are types of trainings where you can get into what we call force on force, right? Where you get a training gun and training mask, and then you put you in a room, right? And you got to go shoot the other dude, right? They got that. How many of those have you done? Right. And they're like, oh, I don't know. I haven't done that before. Right. So you got a lot of couch commandos out there. Okay. And especially when it comes down to the competition shootings, that's one of the things that a lot of people don't appreciate. That when that buzzer goes off, right? Now you're kind of working on instinct. Okay. You're going off of instinct. And it comes down to what is your level of training, right? Because so for like me, my instinct is grab the gun, go, right? Gun runs dry, I'm reloading that gun. Gun jams, I am doing remediation where I'm, tap rack bang, right? Because that's something I've trained with, right? But then you take somebody who says, paper targets don't shoot back, right? Uh, they choke, they choke, and we know this because we teach a lot of new students, right? As soon as something happens that doesn't happen in Call of Duty, right? Like your gun jams, they freeze up. They don't know what to do, especially on a timer. Okay, people don't appreciate how much stress a timer puts on things because now people are staring at you. Now you're being evaluated, right? And just having eyes on you, that really changes the game. Okay, so if guys really want to do shooting where targets are shooting back, that exists. That's out there. You can absolutely do that, right? And I asked them, we do that, all right? Our students actually put on the face mask, and we'll get airsoft guns, right? We'll get our airsoft guns, and then we'll do force on force with them, right? And they're like, oh, I don't know, I'm busy or something. So it's very easy to see the people who know shooting versus the people who are more, like I said, they really only know Fast and Furious, Call of Duty, just a very Hollywood glamorized version of it.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about that is that those type of people that are more into like, tactical training,
Mm-hmm.
they don't understand that shooting is shooting. If you
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know how to shoot, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
you shouldn't even be doing any tactical training because you have to know how to shoot before you do any tactics, in my opinion. And as a civilian, what's the chance of you actually clearing out a room with a team? Which, very unlikely. So, as a civilian, I think the best training for basically any civilian is to train yourself as a one-man team. And in my opinion, the best way is just competition because you get
Mm-hmm.
to uh to train fast, shoot fast,
Mm-hmm.
and think fast, all under pressure. Um, so yeah, and one thing that a lot of the tactical guys they don't understand that what they do in their training, we that's what we do in competition. Also, it's just that we move faster and we shoot faster. So because like I see a lot of tactical training where they would shoot like let's just say they shoot at this target and then they will move to the right and shoot at this target. That's what we do in competition. Also, it's just that we do it faster. And we do it we compete with other people. Um so that's one thing that a lot of like the tactical guys they don't understand. And I think the reason why a lot of those people don't want to compete is because they just, you know, they don't want to know how good they are. And I don't think, yeah, pretty much, yeah, they just don't want to know how good they are. So I think that's why they never show up
You
at a
have that
match.
backwards.
What's that?
They don't want to know how bad they
Oh,
are.
okay.
You got it
All
backwards.
right. All right. But yeah,
Is that
yeah. And that's why I always tell people, especially for civilians, best training, in my opinion, is competition like USPSA, IDPA, you know, um, even two guns, three guns, not just handguns. You could go and do three guns with shotguns, rifles, and handgun, or just two guns if you can't afford to shoot shotguns like me, pistol and rifle. And especially in Minnesota, there's so much batch in Minnesota. And speaking of Minnesota, um, you know what's crazy, man? So Hmong people, so Minnesota has one of the biggest. I think Minnesota has the biggest Hmong population, and I think I could be wrong, but I think Minnesota does have the biggest Hmong population in Minnesota. And what's crazy is that I've been competing for, I would say about shoot, maybe three years now, three and a half. I don't remember, but I have only ran into let me count. Maybe five Hmong people. And I'm just so surprised because Hmong people love guns. Most of all the Hmong people I know own guns, or they have family members that own guns, and man, they don't show up. And I'm just like, what the hell? They like, dude, you guys got to show up, man. But that just kind of shows that, you know, not just Hmong people, but in general, like people don't think of training when they carry gun. They just think about the gun. They just think about that just in case scenario. They don't ever think about training, how to get better, how to, yeah, just get better. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, that's one of the reasons that I'm glad to be in your podcast because I love to get some a little bit more awareness on this of how do you kind of get started. And I think that it does start with a good foundation, right? The quality of instructors out there, it varies wildly, as I mentioned before. Um, if you're just kind of getting training from your uncle who was a police officer for like 10 years, he can teach you some of the basics, and he's probably going to teach you some things that are like not good techniques. Okay. But then when you kind of step it up to somebody who is a little bit more known, or we even talk to even a competition shooter, right? A decent competition shooter is going to know the meta. Okay. They're going to understand, that quality of that grip, that quality of that trigger press. They're going to understand that safety better, right? And they're going to have a higher level of shooting. And then if you want to go like a nationally recognized instructor, yeah, that's going to really push it. Um, the other thing on top of that is it's kind of a very it's kind of very hard to understand thing. Even for myself, understanding like the rules behind competition was kind of difficult too, because I'm around competition shooters, like I follow a lot of them on social media, but I still don't understand the rules, and that's why I reach out to you and I talk to you about it. And it's kind of scary. But what I love for us to do is, let's build that community. Let's kind of get this information out there, because we would love to see more of our friends and family come shoot these matches, right? I say this like I do a lot of matches, but I'm still preparing for my first match because just talking through you.
No, man,
But yeah,
no, you're right though. You're right, and yeah, I totally agree with you. You know, I mean anyone, but especially for like our community, the Hmong community, I hope to see more Hmong people step into the competitive world one day. Because like I said, Minnesota has the biggest Hmong population. In opinion, there should be no excuse not like for only five of us to be at a match. There should be like at least 20 and 30 of us at a match, but unfortunately, that's not the reality.
let's
Yeah.
build it. Let's build it. Let's demystify a lot of the stuff.
Yeah. I think one thing that just people in general, not just Hmong people, but I think they don't understand that I think what they think is that competition is too expensive. Yes and no. It is expensive if
As
you
expensive as you want it to
yes,
be.
exactly. If you want to go all out, then yes, it is
Mm-hmm.
very
Mm-hmm.
expensive. But if you're just using competition as a training, just to get better, then no, it is not expensive at all. It is very, very affordable compared to going, like you will save more money in the long run compared going to the indoor range and fire like 300 rounds. Because like I said earlier, at a match is usually 60 to 130 rounds and you will learn way more, way faster shooting three matches than going to the range and not knowing what to do, and besides just shooting and planking for fun. So,
I
and
I
and,
agree.
and, and a
Yes.
match, a local match is usually only 15 to $25.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. A range fee is 25 to $30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more
So
expensive.
yeah. So yeah.
Absolutely. You're definitely correct on that. The other cool thing is that if you go to a match like that, a lot of times you'll have guys who really want to help you and get
Hmm.
better at shooting. Whereas if you go to range day at your local range, you're just kind of there by yourself, right? And then you're doing all kind of weird stuff while you're shooting, right? And nobody's gonna sit there and correct you, right? Maybe somebody's nice, they're like, hey, your grip's all like screwed up and here's some things to do better. Um, yeah, but generally most of the shooters they're pretty nice guys. And if you start out from the beginning, they'll give you a lot of pointers and really help you to improve.
And speaking of nice guys, dude, like the competitive world, shooting competitive world, man, not everyone, but most of everyone is so humble because you can't really talk crap because everyone get to see how you shoot your
All the
score.
scores are public. Yeah,
Exactly. So
yeah,
you can't talk crap like
yeah.
those people who talk crap online, but doesn't
Mm-hmm.
actually have
Mm-hmm.
proof that they can shoot. So
Yeah.
in my opinion, the competitive shooting world is the most humble, has the nicest people, and they're willing to lend you their gun if you don't have one, or will just give you free advice. Where you would compared to you would have to pay a local instructor to like teach you how to do a certain thing, but then even a B class shooter could give you amazing advice on how to become a better shooter. So that's why I always encourage people to come out and just do it. You're gonna suck. That's okay because once you know that you suck, that's when you will want to improve. And you won't improve until you know that you suck. So I always encourage people to come out. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are. It doesn't matter if you don't have any law enforcement, military background. Don't be shy, man. Just come out, have fun, learn, and you will become a better shooter if you just, you know, come out and get your feet wet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I had mentioned to you this before about the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is something it's a psychology effect, right? Where they did a study and they found that generally the less you know about a topic, more confident you if you feel talking about it, right?
Hmm.
But people who know more about the topic, they realize that there's so much more that they don't understand, right? We see that so much in
Yes.
shooting. If you post up a shooting video to social media or YouTube, right, you're gonna get so many dumb comments. And this kind of goes back to my analogy of guys who only know cars from Fast and Furious versus guys who know how to tune an engine for track day, right? Yeah, and you're going to get a lot of those Fast and Furious guys who they really only know Call of Duty and they, I own a gun. My uncle's a police officer. I taught blah 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 blah. So you don't know what you don't know. That was true for me. That was true of all of these guys, right? And you're right that a lot of they're very very humble, right? They realize that everybody starts at the bottom. We kind of work our way up from there, and a lot of it comes down to you know, uh, taking your ego and kind of stuffing it down inside. Because that was one of the reasons that I didn't want to get into competition shooting because I knew that I was not a bad shooter. But if I go out there and I started shooting, I was going to suck at it. Right now, we say that competition shooting is one of the best ways to learn shooting. The other part of it is that ultimately it still is a game. Okay.
Mm.
When we say that competition shooting is a game, everything is a game.
Yeah.
Okay. The only difference is what is the prize, right? The prize might be, a couple bucks. Prize might be bragging rights. Prize might be you get to live another day.
Mhm.
Okay. Everything is a game. All right. The
Yes.
prizes are just different. Okay. Um, Scott Jedlinski, a Modern Samurai Project, he talks about, do you need a sub-second draw? Right. And that was one of the things I was practicing where 7 yards, 21 feet, being able to hit the A box, right, which is that small section in the middle, in under 1 second from concealment. Okay, so small section, draw from concealment, and getting a sub-second hit. Right, that's one of the standards that he has for his awards in class. So I was practicing that, and that is actually really really hard to do. If we're talking about 3 to 5 yards, which is more realistic of a self-defense distance, that doesn't sound like much, but when you're pushing to like seven is when it gets really hard. 3 yards all day, no problem. Okay. But once you push 7, it takes a lot of skills to do sub-second draws at 7 yards A box. So Scott Jendlinski, he says, do you need a sub-second draw? Only if you have a sub-second problem. Okay. And that's true, right? That's true. Sub-second draw is not really needed for competition. Competition space, most guys are not rushing to get to their gun. Some of their drills, some of the classifiers and drills you guys are doing, you might be, but for generally most of the runs, you don't really need to have like an ultra fast draw. Am I correct in saying that?
In my opinion, yes. You just have to be really consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
like for me, I most of the time I will admit I'm not that consistent. But if I was consistent, man, I look amazing. But when I don't look like if I'm not consistent, even though I'm shooting this the same splits and everything, but I'm not consistent with my run. Like if I fumble a reload or I forget a target, man, it just hurt me. It just hurt my score really bad. So in my opinion, yes, I don't think the sub-second draw really matters. It's more about being consistent and not effing up. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And you actually make a really good point of not looking cool. That's one of those things. John Correa of Active Self Protection, he's another really good guy to follow. So you guys have probably seen his videos on YouTube of,
Mhm.
this guy had to shoot this guy in self-defense, or this police officer had to shoot this person, right? So Active Self-Protection on YouTube. John Correa, he's a really cool guy. He's part of one of those range master instructors. So I've got a chance to like just like chat with him like 1 or 2 times. Um, but he's watched thousands and thousands of firearm shootings, especially self defense ones, right? And one of the things you'll notice is that nobody ever really looks good, yeah, in terms of video, right? This is not Call of Duty, all right. This is not an action movie. Everybody is breathing hard. Three gunfights they're usually only a couple seconds, right? Everybody's breathing hard, right? You're kind of fumbling, and you don't look good, and guys trip and they forget like basic things.
Mhm.
Nobody looks good on video, especially when it comes to like real life stuff. So a lot of guys, they have that a Call of Duty mentality, right? Or the Hollywood mentality that when I draw a gun, it's gonna be slow mo, it's gonna be so cool, so tactical. I'm gonna get all my shots on the bad guy. But no, it's not like that.
Yeah.
It's not like that.
Yeah, it's not, man.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, and yeah, so that's why it goes back to what I'm saying. Competition is the best training because you train under pressure,
Mhm.
stress, and you got to be consistent. And even the top shooters, sometime, not all the time, but sometimes they will still fumble.
Mhm.
So that's why in my opinion, you can never reach at a perfect level. And the only and if you start doing competition, you will realize that um you can only grow. You cannot be at you can never be the top shooter. There's always place to more room to for improvement. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just to kind of piggyback off of that, some of you guys might be wondering, well, is it worthless to take a tactical class? I've taken tactical classes before. So I've taken a couple like CQB classes. CQB, for those who don't know, that's the close quarters battle classes. Those are like clearing rooms, like SWAT style, right? That type of stuff I don't teach. Okay. One of the things especially in the instructor world, the respected instructor world is kind of knowing your place of who you are and what you should be teaching. I shouldn't be teaching CQB because I don't have a formal background in it, right? If I was a SWAT guy or if I was like, military door kicker type of guy, yeah, sure. But I don't have a background in that, right? So my background is more in just being a regular guy and teaching civilian self defense in the context of that. Um, but I've taken some of the formal CQB and tactical type of classes. And one of the things that I wish people understand is that CQB sucks. Okay. CQB sucks. CQB is really meant for like SWAT teams or military teams where there's a couple guys to cover each other's corners. Okay. If you're talking about like solo CQB, that is like the most scariest, dangerous type of CQB out there. Okay. A lot of times that kind of comes down to who sees who first, right? And if you don't have guys covering your back, then you're kind of screwed. Um, so typically, a lot of guys who are much more qualified than me recommend for like home defense kind of thing is that you just camp, right? You literally just get your family, stay in one spot, right, and watch that door. Okay. Here's another tip: if you call the police and you tell them there's a man with a gun in my house, do not walk around being that man with a gun. They see you, they will shoot you first. Okay. So you kind of hunker down, right? You got your family with you. And, if that bad guy shows up in the doorway, do what you need to do to defend your family, right? Um, some of you guys may argue, well, my kids are around the house, so I got to go and I got to go get all my kids. And yeah, absolutely do what you need to do. Just understand that CQB is not it's not a guaranteed game. Okay. That's one of the most dangerous types of gunfighting. And so the guys who actually have to do that, you can do everything right and still lose. Right. So those are you can do that for fun. Absolutely. But I wouldn't teach that formally because I don't have a background in it. And you should take, if you, I've taken CQB force on force where the lessons you learn were through pain. And I can tell you that CQB sucks because I got shot so many times. I was in a bad mood by the end of the day because of how many times I'd been shot. Okay. So it was humbling if you let it humble yourself.
Yep.
Okay. But if you come in there with a big attitude, I'm gonna be Call of Duty highest KD ratio, top of the charts. No. Yeah. Be humble about it.
Yeah, and I agree 100%, and that goes back to, what I was saying about competition is that it teaches you how to shoot because
Mm-hmm.
regardless what kind of self-defense scenario you're in, whether you're defending yourself on the street or inside your home,
Mm-hmm.
you still got to know how to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing competition, it makes you really comfortable. I wouldn't say really comfortable, but more comfortable handling a gun under stress
Mm-hmm.
and pressure than if you did not, if you compared to as if you didn't ever train, under stress and pressure. Because I could guarantee you that most people who don't train will fumble in a real
Yes.
gunfight.
Absolutely.
Even if it's inside the house, they will be like, oh crap, they will mess up their reloads, not because they don't know what they're doing, it's just because they're not used to that pressure. And that's why I always tell people that, yeah, I get it. The target don't shoot back, but in my opinion, pressure is pressure. And even the top shooter could still miss sometime at a target that doesn't shoot back. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I feel like people who say, oh, well, the target don't shoot back. Well, you obviously don't train. So you a target doesn't need to shoot back for you to miss because it I mean what there's no actual training that will shoot back at you with real bullets. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And every gunfight is not a guarantee that you will survive or any kind of training. But the best thing you could do is to prepare yourself as much as possible. And
Mm-hmm.
as a civilian, competition is the way to go because um you it mainly focus on the shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, that's absolutely
Yeah.
true. I can't remember if it was Matt Pranka or Kyle DeFore who talked about this, but he said especially with like police shooting qualifications, a lot of it is more bullseye kind of stuff. Bullseye
Mhm.
just meaning that you come up there, you present to the target, you see the target, and then you just be very accurate. Bang, 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 kind of stuff, right? And then you might have like 5 seconds for this qualifier, which is draw, bang, 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 right? But if you have ever watched police body cam footage, that's not
Yeah.
how it works in the real
Hmm.
world, right? They are grabbing that gun and they are panic firing, right?
Yep.
And that's why everybody always jokes that that cops they have such poor quality of shooting because if all you're being taught is bang, bang, right,
Hmm.
and the real world comes out and that guy is 3 feet from you, you saw that video of that one cop. He knocked on the door and the lady came with a knife and was trying
Yep.
to stab him. Yeah, right, what kind of training he got for that, right? If all he's training for is okay, that target's over there, bang, 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 right? That does not
Hmm.
prepare him for a lady on him, right? Maybe starting like 2, 3 feet from him, right? Trying to kill him, right? What kind of training does he have for that? Right? So competition shooting, if you watch it, it's so you grab it and then you run the gun as fast as you can through a stage. Okay. So that teaches, the quality of the grip, and it teaches you, tracking target and target transitions and everything. So you're absolutely right that um it's underappreciated by the Call of Duty crowd,
Yeah.
because that's what they're used to, right? They're used to, live virtual targets shooting back at them. But it's not that simple.
Yeah.
Even
Yep.
oh, go
Yep.
ahead.
No, no, no.
Go
Go ahead. Go ahead.
ahead. Even so Brendan Bernicki of Gateway Defense, he talks about that yeah, of all like the simunitions, the force on force training classes that he's taken, but a lot of times guys don't take it seriously because once you put that blue gun in their hands, right, they're kind of treating it like a toy.
Yep.
Okay. And so a lot of those fundamentals go out the door because you no longer have to grip it like a handgun, right? You no longer have to treat it seriously because this is a toy, right? And that guy over there, well, he is just a Call of Duty target, right? And so they get really sloppy. And he talks about that. So that's kind of one of the downsides to force on force is that it will teach you a lot if you let it.
Hmm.
Okay. But if you don't come in there with the right mindset, it's gonna give you bad habits.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that, but yeah, you said it before I did. Yeah, I was just gonna say that yeah, if like sometimes people, yeah, yeah, you said already, so I don't need to repeat it. And what's crazy is that like no offense to like the law enforcement, but yeah, their shooting qualification is, I feel like any C class shooter could easily ace it. And a lot of people that don't train, they they think that you need to have a military or a law enforcement background to teach people how to shoot. What you as an instructor that actually understand shooting, what do you think about that when people say you have to have a military or law enforcement background to teach how to shoot, teach people how to shoot?
Depends on what you're trying to teach, right?
Hmm.
If you are trying to teach dudes how to clear a room, then yeah, you absolutely should have a background in clearing rooms like that. That's not something that I've ever done, right? And I've had some guys who are like, you should do law enforcement with us. I'm like, my wife absolutely wouldn't let me. I was like, can I just be like a part-time cop so I can go take some of this cool training that they do? And she's like, nope. So I was seriously considering being a part-time cop so that way I could do cool training stuff and then be on our local SWAT team stuff. Anyway, yeah. So depends on what you're trying to teach. Okay. Uh, Especially if you look at in the context of civilian self-defense, it's going to be different than law enforcement. It's going to be different than military because the mission is different. Okay. Mission is completely different. And what I mean by that is a police officer, your job is to apprehend the suspect. Okay. As for military, you got to follow those rules of engagement. What is it that your current mission is, right? As a civilian, just a regular dude, your job is to get home at the end of the day, doing whatever it takes, right? Fighting tooth and nail, using every dirty trick that you can to get home, right? It is not your job to go apprehend the suspect. And there are sad cases of guys who I call the Call of Duty mindset where there was for example, there was an active shooter in Colorado. I don't have the exact names. I've got to pull it up. But essentially, there's a bad guy in Colorado. He went in with the intention of killing as many police officers as he could. So he went into town. He shot a police officer, right? And he was walking around. So the good guy comes out there, right? Good guy sees that this dude just killed a police officer, right? So good guy draws his concealed carry pistol. He kills the bad guy. And then Call of Duty mindset runs over there, grabs the bad guy's rifle, and now he's looking for more bad guys, right? And something I always teach in my class is that, if police officers think you're a threat, you will be shot. Okay. So you got a bunch of people panicking, calling 911, saying, hey, a guy with a rifle just killed a police officer, right? And police officers, if that call goes out, everyone is coming. Okay. Everyone, all the officers are coming because that is their own. And so officers arrive there, they see a man with a rifle, they just light him up. Okay. So the context of civilian self-defense is that it is not your job to apprehend the suspect. Is your primary goal should be to get home. Okay. And a book that I highly recommend is Violence of the oh gosh. Let me look it up really quick.
Yep,
It is
go ahead.
it's been a while since I read this. Violence of the Mind. Yes, Violence of the Mind by Varg Freeborn. Okay, that's actually a really good one. So Varg Freeborn, he talks about, being true to your mission. He's like, it's sounds corny, but what is your mission, right? If your mission is to get home at the end of the day and to be a parent for your children, right? To be a spouse and take care of your family, then if that guy in that gas station draws a gun on the clerk and you're back there holding a bag of chips, if your mission is to get home at the end of the day, then why are you intervening, right? Because if it doesn't involve you, right, then you are creating more risk for yourself. You're not being true to that mission, right? And so that was something that really kind of clicked with me. That um, it's really cool. Well, number one, I always say that you are good people, right? And you don't like it when injustice happens, okay? But the world is not that simple, right? So many guys would be like, oh, I want to save the day. I want to be on the news that, I stopped the bad guy, right? But as Varg Freeborn, he talks about, is that being true to your mission, right? And if your mission is to get home at the end of the day, take care of your kids, take care of your family, right? Is that true to your mission? Okay. So that is to say that mission sets are different, right? Mission for law enforcement, military versus civilians, they're different, right? If it is not your job to apprehend, if it is not your job to search and find a high value target or whatever, right? Um, Understand that mission, right? Because depending on the guys that you train with, that was their mission. That was what they trained many years of their lives for. Okay. And they kind of teach with that context and that bias, right? And so I recommend when you take a class, kind of look at what are the credentials of that instructor, right? And that will kind of show, what is their mindset, right? For example, like John Lovell of Warrior Poet Society, he's a former ranger, and so that's how he teaches. He teaches based on these are all the things that I experienced being a door kicker, right? Which is really cool. It's really cool to get that experience, but that might be well, it's going to be a lot different than I am a guy taking my family to go get groceries, right? And there's this dude in the parking lot who's kind of giving us the eye, right? Those are kind of two different missions.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely agree with that. Let's see. Um, so why do you think for civilians, why do you think most civilians don't train? And uh why do you think training uh is important for civilians?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. Number one, many people don't know how. Okay. They don't
Yeah.
know how to train. Okay. So, like when I started getting into firearms training, well, I didn't really know what to do. Right. I was reading books. I was reading Masad Ayub's books on concealed carry. Right. And I was learning some really good stuff on that. Right. But I didn't really know who local to me was teaching good handgun classes. Right. And so that's one of the problems is that not knowing how to train. Okay. Number two is that a lot of times, well, or sometimes you do get training and then you kind of think it's good enough, right? My uncle was a police officer for 20 years, right? And so he says that, when you're shooting, you always shoot like this because this is how they taught him to shoot in the academy, right? And so you get a lot of shooters who have really bad technique because, their dad was in the army or in that's how they taught them to shoot. So being number one thing to understand is that being military or police, that's a lot of times that's a small fraction of what they do. Okay, shooting tends to be a small fraction of what they do. Okay, so that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to give you the best quality of instruction, right? Um, so number one, not really knowing how to train. Number two is the expense associated with it. Ammo prices they go up, but they don't really come down, right? So you're talking about range time, which is like what, $30 nowadays for range time. And then you're talking about, I have to take out like an hour or two of my time to go to the gun range. On top of that, you got to get the gun, right? And what gun am I going to get? Am I going to get a Glock or like a PSA dagger, or maybe I like a Springfield? Getting the gun, that's another big expense. And then your ammunition costs, you're looking at a box of 50, about like 25, $30 right now, right? So, it might be like $100 for you to go train for like an hour or two. And then when you go train, all people know is okay, I go to the gun counter, I go buy that bullseye target, right? I'm gonna sit there with my gun, right? I'm gonna try to shoot that bullseye target. Bang, bang, right? And that's what people know, right? So why people don't train is that they don't know how to train, and that it's kind of expensive to do it. Okay, and so what I think that comes down to is, maybe we need to advertise more. Maybe we need to kind of present to the community that, hey, if you really want to be serious about this, if you want to be confident in your skills in using a firearm for self defense, it might be a good idea for us to advertise a bit more, right? Kind of build these communities. Like we were talking about how we're trying to build communities for just like home guys and our families to go do some competition shooting, right? Um, how do you start that? Right? And it's tricky to say. Right? It's tricky to say how do you start that, because a lot of people think they don't need to as well. So I would say that. Oh, actually, one other thing that also prevents people from training is that they think they're good enough already. Okay, this goes back to that Fast and Furious mentality. That okay, I own a car and I've watched Fast and Furious, and sometimes me and my friends we will go a little bit too fast on the highway. Right? Does not mean you know anything about racing. Okay. Same thing with a gun. You own a gun, you've played Call of Duty, you've gone to the range like maybe 2 times this year. Does not necessarily mean that you know anything about high quality shooting. Okay. But a lot of guys, they kind of get in that mentality of, yeah, they know a lot about guns. They grew up around guns. Their family knows a lot about guns. So yeah, sometimes it comes down to a little bit of hubris. Those are the guys who really like to comment on social media stuff like YouTube and tell you how wrong you are. I posted a video of how this is not a bullet, right? I posted a social media about that, and I was explaining, this is actually a cartridge. These are the components of a cartridge, right? And the bullet is just one component of the cartridge. I only got 3 death threats on that, right? Only 3 death threats. Pretty quiet day.
Yeah, I think and I agree. And I think most people don't train because training, like real training, is boring.
Mm-hmm.
For example, dry firing. That I think, in my opinion, dry fire helps a lot, but nobody, well, I wouldn't say nobody, but the people who don't train find dry fire really boring, so they don't
Yeah.
want to do it. And um, also people don't have a goal of like
Yes.
where they
Yes.
want to reach. So if they go to the range and they just shoot bullseye all day, and
Mm-hmm.
in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, that's not real training. Yeah, it just shows that you're good at shooting slow.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't actually show that you know how to shoot,
Mm-hmm.
and because in order for you to, in my opinion, in order for you to be a good shooter, you have to learn how to shoot fast. And
Yes.
as you get better, you just have to keep them going faster and
Mm-hmm.
faster. Um, in my opinion, the only time you should shoot slow is when you're just testing out the gun. Just want to test the gun, how it feels, test a trigger or sighting in your dot or irons. Um, and that's it. Other than that, after you learn how to operate that gun, you have to speed up right away. And people will say, "Well, I can't. Why would I speed? Why would I shoot fast if I can't shoot slow?" the thing is, once you shoot fast, you're not going to be able to hit the target. The faster you go, you're going to suck more
Mm-hmm.
and more, and then you
Mm-hmm.
just have to keep on working from there. So
Yes.
that's why I always tell people to, yes, not, I'm not saying shoot fast right away. Start out slow, but don't take too much time on shooting slow, because when you take too much time on shooting slow, you're going to build that slow habit, and it's not going to make you, and you're going to be so comfortable shooting slow, and when it's time to actually shoot fast, you're gonna you're going to you're going to suck. Yeah, so uh yeah, so yeah, you're going to suck if you continue on shooting slow. Um yeah, I lost my train of thought, but yeah. Yeah, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. If we need to pause for a minute, we can pause for a minute.
No, we good. We good. We could keep on going. My wife
Okay.
is just trying to get uh our puppy.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, our puppy is injured right now. So
Oh,
yeah. So she doesn't want
just
to
let her know.
walk.
Just grab him.
Yeah, dude,
Just grab him.
just grab her. But yeah, okay, so shoot.
Okay. Actually,
Yep.
I got to piggyback off that. So I got to piggyback off that.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, because you're talking about shooting fast, right? And people don't
Hmm.
understand, what's so important about shooting fast. And most police departments don't understand what's so important about shooting fast because those a lot of those police calls are shooting real like slow, concentrated fire. Okay. I mean, that'll teach you some very basic stuff, right? But then when we actually look at self-defense shootings or you look at officer involved shootings, right? What does that look like? That looks like grabbing that gun, right? Something bad has really happened, and then you just start blasting as quickly as you can, right? And I think having that mentality of how do I kind of train for that, right? And it
Yes.
comes down to being realistic. That's something that I do a lot in even like my concealed carry classes. I always tell my students that I don't teach tactical ninja theory. The stuff I'm going to teach you is based on news stories and videos of self defense, actual real world scenarios, right? Um, a lot of people I know they like to be very Call of Duty about it. So, for example, one guy I know, he says that he built out his AR, right? He bought his wife body armor, right? And so he says that yeah, something happens, my wife, she's gonna put on her body armor and her kit, and she's gonna grab her rifle and go. I'm like, well, I mean, it's fun to have that stuff, but realistically, if somebody kicks in your door, how much time do you have to sit there, go and strap on your plate carrier, right? Go find your rifle and go, right? Um, some of these home invasion type of scenarios, they are fast, right? The door gets kicked in and the guys are just in the house in a matter of like 2-3 seconds, right? Can you strap on a plate carrier in 3 seconds, right? They might be in your bedroom in under 10 seconds. Can you be ready that quick, right? And so I think that's unrealistic, right? Having a full plate carrier setup for a potential home invasion scenario, right? So everybody's home layout is different, but I think that we should be more realistic in what we're preparing for because it's that Call of Duty mentality. That's what I call it.
Yeah, and the chance of uh Second Amendment war, it's, I mean, I'm not saying it's not possible. It is possible, of course, but what's the chance of it actually happening anytime soon? I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon. So I feel like people should focus more on, training from concealment and just becoming a better shooter as a civilian. Yes, you should learn how to shoot with plate carriers and all that stuff, but I don't think that should be your main focus. I think your main focus should be about shooting fast and reacting faster. Yeah, I think
100% agree.
that will serve you a better purpose than uh, always thinking about the Second Amendment
Mhm.
or stuff like that. Since we were talking about home defense, in your opinion, uh, as an instructor that teaches, self-defense, what do you think is the best firearm for which type of firearm do you think is best for home defense and why?
The cop out answer is the one that you're most proficient with. Okay. That's a cop out answer, but at the same time, that's true, right? If you're somebody who has trained a ton in handgun, yeah, go for the handgun. If you are somebody who's trained a ton in rifle, go for the rifle. Same with shotgun as well. Okay. Um, but if you have no training in any of them, what should you pick up, right? Generally, long guns are going to be better than handguns in terms of defensive application. Okay. Long gun meaning a rifle or a shotgun, right? So a rifle or shotgun is generally going to be better for home defense, right? And then you get into the whole thing of, you know, if I have to shoot through the wall or I have to shoot inside the house, right? That bullet's going to go through drywall. All of them are going to go through drywall. Okay. All of them. And so that comes down to being, what is the phrase? Oh, being accountable for every shot that you make. Okay. The thing is, your home is your castle. So you get to plan ahead of time, right? And so a lot of the very well respected guys, they'll do walkthroughs of the house. They'll say, oh, yeah, I can take these corners, I can shoot in these areas. My neighbors live on this side. My children sleep in these rooms, right? So they generally have an idea of, what are shoot and no shoot areas. Okay. So you could have an idea of that. I believe that preparation is better. Okay. You don't have to go crazy with the preparation. Getting a video doorbell. Okay. This is where I get into the cybersecurity side of things. And I will tell you that a lot of times I will help like family. They'll say, hey, can you install this video doorbell for me? And I'll go over there and it's some kind of really cheap Chinese garbage. Okay. What really matters with the video security camera system is the back end. Who is actually doing the network stuff for it? So it's some kind of weird Chinese thing that you got on sale for like 20, $30 on Amazon. I can tell you that thing is going to be pretty much junk, right? It's going to be pretty much junk. Um, at a minimum, you should be getting something like Ring, because that's owned by Amazon, or Google Nest, because they actually have a good backend. So that if somebody shows up at your door at midnight, right, you can check your phone, right, and then Amazon or Google infrastructure is going to be able to load that camera quickly, and you can see, who is this? Should I be opening the door for them? Right? So at a minimum, get a video doorbell. They're not too expensive. They're you can get a good one for like under $100 or around $100. Okay, get a brand name. Don't get some random Chinese thing. Get Ring or Google Nest, or there's like one or two other brands that off the top of my head that are good, but I can't think of that at the moment. Um, in terms of firearms, what I would say is that um, the reason that I like my Glock 19 is because this is kind of my do all gun. This is my concealed carry gun. This is a range gun. And this is the gun that I can shoot very fast with. This is the one that I've won different challenges with, right? This gun is not great at any particular thing, but it's pretty good at most things. Okay. It's a decent size where I can conceal carry it. I can run it from like a full size holster and everything. Right. So my theory with handguns for the longest time is just getting one gun and being very, very good with it. Okay. That was my theory. I've carried this Glock 19 for, oh gosh, maybe like 6 or 7 years now at this point. Okay. I've got, I don't know, maybe 15,000 rounds through it, which you talk to competition guys, they'll do that much in a year. So honestly, that's really not that much. Um, So if I really had to pick something, I would say, what is something that you can really train with? Okay. So you may be limited. We talked about that most people, they don't have a place where they can just go shoot anytime they want. Um, so a handgun might not be a bad idea at all. Okay. If you want a do everything gun, a concealed carry gun, a home defense gun, a range gun, a handgun may not be a bad idea at all, right? Because if that's the thing that you can train with, yeah, that's a good one. If we're talking about a long gun, I've been a rifle guy for the majority of the time I've been shooting. I've just recently started getting into shotgun, and the more I learn about shotgun is just a fight stopper, right? So that's the Clint Smith thing. At the right shotgun load at the right distance will absolutely just devastate anybody. Okay. And shotguns might be better, but are you good enough to use it, right? And do you have a good enough shotgun load, right? Definitely don't be using birdshot, right? There are plenty of videos online of people getting shot like at 3, 5 feet with birdshot, and they're still going, right? There's a video of a guy, he's going to a college campus, right? And there's just a college girl just walking around, and from a distance of like under 10 feet, he just blasts her with birdshot. And she's stunned, but she's standing. She's not dead. And she's a small college girl, right? So don't use birdshot for self defense. Okay, you at a minimum you should be using a buck load. There's like number one, number four, and like double lot. Are some different ones. I could go on this for a long time, but I would just say use a high quality type of round, and just know that you are accountable for every shot that you fire. Okay, so if you're going to use a shotgun, you should pattern it. You should get a big sheet of paper, and at about like 5 or 10 yards, just fire at it and just see how big is the spread. Generally, the rule of thumb for shotguns is you're going to see about 1 inch of spread for every yard. So if you're shooting at, say, like 5 yards, around 5-ish inches of spread, 10 yards, around 10 inches of spread, right? Ish. It's a very well known thing that every shotgun is its own unique little princess. And so they're going to do different things. And it varies from barrel to barrel, right? Meaning that even if you have the same brand of shotguns, each barrel is going to do something slightly different. And they're going to like different loads better than others. Okay. That's just a weird shotgun thing. Okay. Um, Personally, I use a rifle because that's just what I've trained with the most, right? And if I have the advantage of a rifle, then yeah, I'm going to use a rifle. I have a 16-inch AR that I use because with the AR, something a little bit too short, you lose some of that stopping power capability, especially with the 5.56 round. So I use just a 16-inch. A lot of people get hung up that if you fire a gun indoors, then there goes your hearing, right? So a lot of guys are like run suppressors in your guns, but there's this amazing thing called earmuffs, and you can actually take your earmuffs, just stage them with your gun, right? So you can just grab the gun first, right? Because we talked about how home invasion scenarios, you may only have a couple of seconds, right? So if I can grab the gun first, right? If I have another second, I can grab the earmuffs. Yeah, yeah, that's something. That's how I have mine staged. Yeah. But pre-plan, okay? Have a plan beforehand. Get a video doorbell. Talk to your family about, what are we going to do if there's a fire? What are we going to do if there's a home invasion? What are we going to do if, you're at the mall and you get separated, right? Especially families who have kids. Yeah, have some of this basic information. Um, one of the one of the best and often overlooked things is teaching your kids, what is your home address? What are your parents' names? What are your parents' phone numbers, right? Because I know plenty of stories of kids who, at the mall or just at different types of gatherings, right, where the kids get lost, and the only thing they know is that my mom's name is mom and my dad's name is dad, right? And so it gets difficult to kind of reunite your kids with you. So, yeah, those are my thoughts.
Okay. Well, since you were talking about shotgun,
Mhm.
what do you think about what do you think of using a 20 gauge for self-defense instead of a 12 gauge, or do you still prefer to just go with 12 gauge?
Um, from shotgun guys who are much more experienced than me, 20 gauge is not bad. As long as you can get a good quality buck load, right? Um, you don't want to use birdshot, so you want to use something heavier like a I don't even really know my 20 gauge loads. I'm pretty sure there are like double aught and number one, number four buck loads for shotguns in 20 gauge. Yeah, it's the recoil is more manageable. So that's honestly not a bad idea at all. Kind of the darling of the shotgun world right now in terms of defensive load is going to be federal flight. Actually, I got one over here. is going to be federal flight control. This is the 8 pellet double-aught buck law enforcement. Okay, this is actually a low recoil load, right? It says law enforcement on the box. It doesn't say low recoil. Well, this recoils like birdshot. So this is actually very low recoil. Because this is kind of the darling child, this is the hardest stuff to find because all the shotgun guys, this is what they really stock up on. So I have a couple hundred rounds of this. Yeah, so this is an 8 pellet. The reason you want an 8 pellet versus a 9 pellet, there's just this weird thing with 9 pellet where when you fire it, the ninth pellet, it tends to be a flyer. Okay. So you'll have a tight group, but then the number 9 pellet, for some reason, it just kind of flies. It's just kind of a weird thing of how they stack them. So when you stack them in an 8 shot configuration, they're actually tighter, right? So we talked about how with a shotgun load, they do about 1 inch per yard. This does crazy stuff. Okay, this is a very tight group. So I've got a video on it. I haven't posted yet. So I did a 10-yard shoot where so a Winchester 9 pellet double-aught buck, it did about like 10 or 11 inches at 10 yards. Okay, and then I fired one of these, and it did a shot group about like 2 inches. Okay, so some guys are like, well, if at 10 yards this is doing like a 2 inch group, why not just use a slug? This gets into like the ballistics of it, where a slug acts more like a pistol round because it's going around like 12 to maybe 1600 depending on your load. That's more a pistol velocity, so it just acts like a big old pistol round where it's just hitting and just destroying, devastating. But this is more like shooting someone with a 30 caliber pistol 8 times. This is going to be more devastating than a slug. Right? That's there's a lot to talk about when it comes to shotgun stuff. So I don't want to waste the whole podcast talking about shotgun stuff. And honestly, I am not the foremost shotgun expert. Like I said, I've only been doing this for like a couple of weeks now, so I'm still very much learning about shotguns. So I think they're very impressive in the capabilities. I think they're a little bit misunderstood because shotguns tend to be pretty cheap. So a lot of guys will buy these cheap Turkish tactical shotguns and they will just kind of deck them out. And they just don't really appreciate what the shotgun's capable of. And they don't really appreciate quality shotguns. Yeah.
Okay. What's a funny thing you see new gun owner do when they first get into like just guns in general? What are some funny things that you see?
Over accessorizing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure you see that too. Yeah. You get that new gun, it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna change out the trigger and then I'm gonna get the shiny red parts and then I'm gonna add a red dot. I'm gonna add all this parts and this parts and this parts, right? Call of Duty, right? Because you get a new gun in Call of Duty, you're gonna swap out the parts and change it to cool colors. Yeah, over accessorizing. If So one thing to know is that if you look at this is my go-to gun. This is my everyday carry gun. There's nothing really special about it. Okay. Essentially, it's mostly stock. The only things I got going on is I've got a light right and a red dot. Okay. Um, the sights are changed. Number one is that these sights, they don't actually work, right? They're actually too low for this optic. Okay. The plastic lock sights, they kind of suck, and they can break because they're plastic. Okay. You'll notice that it has a threaded barrel because I blew up my barrel with one of my 9mm reloads. So I made a round of 9mm that was a little bit too hot, and then I destroyed the original barrel. Okay. Other than that, the gun's really not flashy at all, right? Compared to the other Gucci Glocks out there, this looks like a mostly stock Glock handgun. And actually, I want it like that on purpose. Okay. Because when I teach, I don't want my students to look at my gun and say, hey, you've got a really flashy gun, right? So the only reason you can shoot fast and win awards is because you've got a really flashy gun with all the cool gizmos and gadgets, right? The only really kind of game changer things is just having a red dot, right? This weapon light is mostly so it fits the holster that I have. I am running a Filster floodlight where the holster fits the light. It doesn't. I have hundreds. I have dozens of holsters. I'm kind of sick of buying holsters. So the Filster floodlight allows me to buy any gun that I want as long as it fits this flashlight. It'll work with that holster. Okay. So the only really thing that's different is that I've got this red dot on it. Okay. the trigger that I have in here, you'll notice that this is, I mean, that's a pretty normal looking Glock trigger. I have a ghost connector in here. The ghost connector allows, it just drops the weight down from the stock weight to like about like 3.5, 4-ish pounds. Okay. That is like that's like a $15 part. Okay. I see a lot of guys, they get their gun and immediately they're putting in like $200 triggers in their gun. Right. And I can shoot very well. Just like a $15 connector, which I don't even really need. It's just such an inexpensive thing, and it really improves the feel of the trigger. Okay, does that actually matter? Not really. No, no, not really. If you're shooting fast, you don't really pay attention to the trigger as much because you're just gripping it and ripping it. Okay. Um. So yeah, the things that I see that they're kind of really silly is guys getting guns and then just over accessorizing and over modifying it. Honestly, be good with stock guns and then start to realize, hey, okay, now that I'm good with the stock gun, I think that there are some things that could be better, right? So maybe you do get a slightly better trigger, maybe you do get that nicer red dot sight or things like that. Okay, um, but you don't need anything particularly fancy to become a good shooter. Okay, the very good shooters that I know, I mean, they're running some fairly simple guns. Yeah, some fairly simple guns. So that's what I would say is a big trap that a lot of guys run into is that they want that Call of Duty experience where you've got a very custom gun and it looks really cool and really flashy, but they have no skill with it. Okay. With this handgun, this is essentially, I have a lot of Glocks. I probably have 6 or 7 Glocks, and none of them are new. I bought all of them used. Okay. Most of them are like used police department guns. Some of them are just from like guys that I met and bought it off of them. So you don't need anything fancy. I can outshoot guys with, $2,000-3,000 staccatos because they don't train, right? If they trained, yeah, they could definitely outshoot me with their staccato, but I can easily outshoot them with a used $400 clock and like a $400 optic because they just don't train, right? So that's what it really comes down to. Using another car analogy, any of you guys who have played car games, you know that you load up like Gran Turismo or something for the first time, right? You want to go on a track, and the first thing you do is you find the fastest car you can race in Gran Turismo, and you just go straight into the wall, right? Because you don't know how to control it, right?
Yep.
And that's what a lot of guys do. They may start off with that $2,000-3,000 staccato, right? But they can't appreciate it because they don't have any of those fundamentals. And since they don't have any fundamentals, they cannot actually push that nice gun to what it's capable of, right? So Glocks are my go-to. That's what I recommend. Um, Tons, the most part support of any gun out there. You can build a Glock and never use a single OEM Glock part. Um, Highly reliable. If you keep it close to stock, they're highly reliable. Okay. Once you start modifying it with your Amazon special parts or your eBay special parts, that's when you're going to start to see more problems. Um, that's why I recommend most guys just keep your guns close to stock and train with it. Training get good.
Yeah, man. Speaking of Amazon, dude. Oh my God, dude. I regret so much when I first
Yes.
got into just fire in general. I
So
would
much
go on
trash.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would go on Amazon and buy the most like cheapest thing ever. And you know
Mm-hmm.
what's crazy about Amazon is that Amazon has the worst reviews ever because every single item is almost 5 stars,
Yes.
and it's
Yes.
being reviewed by people who don't train or people
Yeah.
who didn't even
Yeah.
test out the item. Like they just put the light or the dot on their gun and take a
Yeah.
picture of it and be
Mm.
like, awesome.
Five
This is
stars. The
great. And
best.
but then they didn't even test it yet. And then as a new shooter or a new gun owner, you don't know anything. So you just read these reviews and be like, oh wow, so much people are saying it's great. So you buy it and then you actually go test it and it doesn't even last or it
Mm-hmm.
won't even
Mm-hmm.
zero. And yeah, so I laugh on myself when I think back about when I first get into guns, and I would just do unnecessary upgrades on my guns. Like like I would change uh
Like
I just
triggers
changed,
and
yeah, triggers and
springs
everything,
and
and it makes no
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
And what's funny is that I will upgrade to very expensive trigger,
Mm-hmm.
and I still shoot slow with it.
Mm-hmm.
I still
Mm-hmm.
shoot like one, and then
Yeah.
one Mississippi, two Mississippi,
Yeah.
bam. And then,
Yep.
even though I have like a very light trigger on my gun, and yeah, so I find it really funny when I see people do that because it reminds me of myself. I mean, I don't blame them. It's because they don't know what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I always tell people that when you first get into shooting, um, your mindset should not be about guns. It should be about training. Because
Yes.
once your mindset is about training, you will know what gun to buy next.
Oh yeah.
Like because you will have a specific reason to buy your next gun. Like, okay, I want this gun for this reason. And then that's when you will be able to pick out the right next gun, the right gun. Compared to as if you don't know anything, you watch YouTube and you have these YouTubers that doesn't actually train. They would say, "Oh, great gun." After firing 100 rounds, you go buy it, and then you regret it in the long run. You sell it at a loss and things like that. So that's why I always tell people, especially if you're broke like me and you're trying to stay on a budget, training and ammo should be on your mind, not the gun. Because once you get better at training, better at shooting, you will realize that, the gun, yeah, it's cool to have a lot of guns, but if you're trying to be on a budget, the gun doesn't really mean nothing. It's more about the skill set, and just training and ammo. And then you will not waste money on buying guns that you will never shoot. You will spend more time actually shooting that gun that you have. Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
I
So,
agree.
so yeah, yeah, I laugh at myself, man. I regret so much. I
We
go back.
we all have our boxes of shame. We
Yeah.
all do.
I go back and look at my purchase history on Amazon. Oh my God, dude, I cringe so freaking bad, dude. I
Oh.
cringe. I almost puked, man. It's so bad here. Um so yeah, yeah. But since we're talking about self-defense stuff, I know that you carry appendix
Hmm.
as a bigger guy.
Hmm.
How, because I know that, okay, so for me, before I started with 3 o'clock position,
Hmm.
and I didn't try appendix because I have a dad bod. So
Hmm.
my excuse was, oh, because my stomach is too big. But then I also realized that there are much bigger guys than me that is able to carry appendix. So what advice can you give to bigger guys like us about appendix?
Oh man, that is an excellent question. Uh all
Did
right.
you did you have
I'm
to
gonna I'm gonna
modify?
grab my
Yep,
I'm gonna grab my holster. You're gonna
yep,
have
yep,
to give me like 10. You're gonna have to give me 1 minute. Let me go around and grab
yep,
my
yeah. Go
holster
ahead, go
so I
ahead.
can illustrate this part.
All right, all right. So we're back. So yeah. So the question was, um, do you have any advice for bigger guys that want to appendix carry to carry
Yeah,
appendix? Yeah.
no, that's an excellent question, and I think one of the big thing that it comes down to is understanding why appendix carry, right? So we talked about earlier what are the different types of carry, right? We talked about 3 o'clock carry. So that's how I started carrying 3 o'clock, right? And so for those of you who don't know what that is, right? So essentially, if you're looking at your clock positions, right? If you were to stick a clock on top of your head, 12 o'clock would be like right in front of you. 3 o'clock would be if you're right-handed, that would be your strong side, or if you're left-handed, you would carry 9 o'clock, right? So just on the hip, essentially, right? So that's how I started. Okay, so it's fairly comfortable. The downside is that it's kind of slow. Okay, and so what I mean by that is that when you're going to carry, okay, I'm sorry, when you're going to draw, you've got to do. There's a couple of ways of doing it where you can take your thumb and you can lift up your garment and then grab the gun, or you can take your support hand and then grab the garment and then draw the gun. Um, but it's slower. Okay, Now, appendix carry, the main advantage to it is that it is very fast. Okay. On some body types, it conceals incredibly well. Okay. For really skinny guys, the gun just melts. Okay. It just absolutely disappears. All right. I'm a bigger dude. I got a muffin top. Right. But I can still appendix carry with fairly good concealability. Okay. It's not completely invisible. Right. It's going to poke out a little bit, especially some of these edges on the gun. They're going to poke out a little bit. Well, unless you're like really looking for it, you're really not going to notice it. And if I'm wearing like a hoodie, yeah, the hoodie's gonna cover everything. So why appendix carry, right? It seems unsafe. Why would you want a gun pointed at your nuts, right? It seems like a terrible thing to do. But it comes down to how good is your equipment. So I mentioned before that I carry a Filster holster. This is a Filster. Why am I just blank? Filster floodlight. Okay, so I carry a Filster floodlight. You'll notice that I've got a tourniquet strapped to the side of it. This goes back to just learning more. John Correa of Active Self Protection, who has gone over thousands and thousands of self defense videos of shootings, and he says that yeah, in all the civilian, just regular people having to shoot in self defense, he has only seen like maybe one or two times where they may have needed to reload. Okay, so he says that reloading is it's not a realistic thing for the thousands of self-defense shootings that he has seen, right? And at first I didn't believe that. I was like, what are you talking about? I watch all these police videos and they're reloads all the time so they can dump more bullets into these bad guys. But he's like, no, that's a police context. And this goes back to your mission, right? Mm-hmm. If your mission as a police officer is to apprehend the suspect, then yes, there's a strong chance you may need to do a reload. But as just a civilian, just a regular person, if your mission is get out of the threat, right? So either by shooting the threat or escaping or talking your way out of it, right? Then realistically, there's, like I said, there's thousands of the videos that he's watched, and he's really only seen like one or two times where somebody's needed a reload. So what he recommends instead is carrying a tourniquet, right? Even my students, this is some of the very basic stuff that we teach in our classes is how to use a tourniquet. My students have used them before. One of my students, he had a car crash. He saw a car crash in front of him, right? And he ran out there to go help. And then one of the kids was bleeding pretty bad. And he was able to use a tourniquet to help save that child's life, right? And that was a tourniquet that he got in my class and the tourniquet that we practiced with in my class. Okay. So just understanding how to use a tourniquet as a life-saving tool. So that's why I carry a tourniquet instead. Also, you'll notice that this is not a standard Filster configuration. Filster is spelled Phlster. I like Filster because many people make holsters. Very few companies understand holsters. Okay. Anybody can make a holster. I was making holsters for a long time. You can buy the plastic sheets and you just heat them up and you just stick them onto the gun and then bam, you get a holster, right? Just add some clips, done, right? Anybody can make a holster. You go to Amazon, hundreds, if not thousands of holsters out there that you can get for like 10, 20 bucks. Okay. Filster holsters, they're about like in the $60 to $120 range because very few people understand holsters. Okay. And what do I mean by that? I mean that Filster holsters are designed and used by experts. All right. And by experts, I mean guys who they are rough and tumble. They'll go into ground fighting for these types of holsters. Okay, there's a lot of design considerations into how to make a high quality holster. Most of your other companies, they're just seeing that this seems to be a popular feature. Let's just add it on there, but they don't understand what those features are actually doing. For example, these are the discrete carry concepts clips. Okay, these are metal clips. Now, a lot of people don't like the metal clips because they are hard to put on. Okay. However, they tend to use the plastic hook. It's very easy to put on. It's also very easy for it to fall off. Okay. And we know this because in our gun classes, right, people will be training with that. And that little crappy plastic hook, the longer you use it, it starts to deform. And then they will draw the gun and the whole holster just flops right out of the pants. Right. So that's why I don't like the plastic hooks. I don't recommend them. These are a little bit harder to put on. They're not that hard, but they're a little bit harder to put on. Once you get some practice with it, they're not too bad. Okay. But they hold on and they don't come off, right? I've had this for a year. Actually, these are new. By new, I mean they're about like maybe 8 months to a year old. Okay. And you'll notice that they still have very good shape in them. Okay. They have not deformed or anything. Other things like this little piece that sticks out here, what this does is this keeps the gun tighter to your body, so that way it sticks out less. Some of you guys may be wondering what this is. All right. If you're very serious about concealed carrying, this is one of those tricks, right? Because if you got a muffin top, what the holster is going to want to do is the holster is going to contour to your belly, and it's going to poke out like the gun is going to poke out like this. Okay. So this is your belly, right? And you got a dad bod like me, your gun's going to poke out like this, right? You don't want that. So what you do is you actually take these. These are actually the pads from like a tactical helmet. You can get them on Amazon for like 10, $15. You get a whole giant pack of them. And then I just added some Velcro to my holster. So that way I can just add more of these on. And then you can just customize it to fit that curve of your belly. So that way it'll keep it upright and it will hide the outline of your gun in your shirt. So with this setup, you with concealed carry, you do have to change a bit of how you wear clothes. So you have to wear like a size up in your pants. So if I don't have a belt on, my pants pretty much just fall off because my belts are about one size up from normal. So that way I can fit a gun in there. Okay. So a wedge really helps the gun to contour better to the body. Okay. In terms of comfort, it took a little while for me to find that sweet spot in terms of comfort. Right. Typically, what I do is the rear sight sits a little bit high of my belly button. Okay. So my belly button's here. The rear sight actually sits about like right here. Okay. And sometimes a little bit over like that. Right. So this goes into the quality of the training. One of the things that you can do is called a proprioceptive index, where in elementary school, you're taught that you have five senses, but that's not true. You actually have way more than five senses. You have a sense of time, you have a sense of pressure, you also have a sense of where your body is in space, right? Because if you were to close your eyes, right, and I told you to like touch your nose and then touch your ear, right, or touch your shoulder, very easy to do, right? Just like some people can go blind or they can go deaf, you can actually lose your sense of proprioception, where your body is in space, right? So there are some people, when they close their eyes, they have no idea where their hands just went. Okay. Um, but what that means is that I always know where my belly button is. Okay. So thumb goes to belly button. And the way I draw is thumb goes to belly button, and then I hit my rear sight. Okay. And when I hit my rear sight, I wrap around and I always get a good high purchase on the gun. That's something that I learned in Modern Samurai Project. He likes to do thumb to rear sight, and that gets him a good high purchase. And that's how I draw my gun. Okay. So I like Filster because they understand holsters. Okay. Many people make holsters, few people understand them, right? For example, like We the People holsters, they're an example of they do a lot of marketing and social media. I see them a lot in my classes, but they're they're not the best, not the worst, but you can tell that they're just kind of copying features. They don't really necessarily understand what makes a good holster and what works in terms of concealment. Now, these wedge things, this is a Filster concept. Okay. I don't know if they started it, but I see them talking about this all the time. They have a Facebook group called the Filster Concealment Workshop. And so they are all about how do you get the gun to fit your body type. Okay. And they understand that everybody's body type is different, right? So everyone's setup is going to be a little bit different. This is the setup that works for me, which is going to be different than somebody who is like a smaller guy who weighs like 100 pounds. Right? So this is how I carry mine. Appendix can be comfortable. You just kind of have to find that sweet spot, right? So I can drive for like 2-3 hours, like in this position. Well, not just drive for 2-3 hours, pretty much have the gun on me all day, right? Sitting in a car, just getting stuff done. And yeah, I can go with this in an appendix position. And it's it'll be more comfortable without it on, right? But it's not the worst. It's not the worst. 3 o'clock position, in my opinion, is it's going to be a little bit more comfortable, right? But I can be very, very fast carrying an appendix. Okay. So that's kind of the trade off. It's a little bit less comfortable, but in terms of speed, way, way wicked fast carrying an appendix position.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. I think one of the main reason why people, even like big guys, I feel like any size could carry appendix, but the reason why most people don't carry appendix, well, I wouldn't say most, but some people don't carry appendix is because they don't know how to, and they don't understand that in order for you to carry appendix, you need an appendix holster. And that was one of my mistake too, because uh my very first holster was We the People, right? And I try appendix, but it keep on printing through my shirt. So that's why I carry 3 o'clock. And I was cheap. I didn't want to spend more than $30, $40. It cost, that's how much it cost back then. I don't know how much We the People cost now, but back when I first carry a gun, so that's why I carry 3 o'clock. And because I didn't want to spend the extra money, and I didn't buy an appendix holster, and I didn't know that it has to be an appendix holster until I started training a lot, and I realized that if I'm carrying 3 o'clock for self-defense, it's going to be really hard to draw while I'm driving because the gun is right by, where you buckle the belt, and it is really hard to reach for that gun, compared to like appendix where you can still draw your gun while the seatbelt is on. And I didn't start carrying appendix until I tried out I until I finally decide to spend extra money, like a Tier 1 and T-Rex and Verx holster. And then when I finally decide to buy one of those holsters, I realized how easy it is to appendix carry, even though I have a dad bod and everything. And also, um, how I carry appendix, um, my belt, I don't start from the front. I start on the side. So that way that metal piece of the belt is not over the holster. So it's on the side.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that really made me um realize how easy it is to
Hmm.
carry appendix, and it's super comfortable. I could carry all day, and I mean, yes, like if you carry like all day long, you will feel kind of some kind of pain, but it's I in my opinion it's still the most comfortable way to carry a gun. So that's one advice that I would tell recommend to people is that first, buy an appendix holster. It has to be an appendix holster. And then second, um instead of looping your belt from the front, loop it on the side. And then and then people will ask like, well, what about when I need to go take a piss? Okay, now that's very important because I didn't think about that when I first started carrying appendix, because I'm those type of people that like to wear basketball short under my jeans because you never know, a game of 21 might pop out of nowhere and you have to take off your
Yeah.
pants to play, right? So I stopped wearing basketball short under my pants, and if you're gonna appendix carry, I highly recommend wearing boxer because that's the only way to take a piss without taking off your gun, is to piss through the hose. So um that's some I always tell people that, yeah, if you're gonna appendix carry, make sure it's an appendix holster. If your belt, loop it from the side and not the front, and make sure you wear a boxer because that's how you're gonna
Hmm.
pee when you
Hmm.
appendix carry. So yeah, and then after that, yeah, I think anyone could appendix carry, no matter your size. Yeah. You just have to
Absolutely.
know. Yeah, and obviously you have to adjust the clips and everything because everyone has different body size. But if you once you find uh shoot, brain fart. Once you figure that all that out, appendix carry will be easy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add about the about appendix carry?
Um, why would you point a gun at your nuts? And I would say that, well, there's disadvantages, but at the same time, um, what's the quality of your equipment, right? Because that's one thing that nobody really talks about, right? Like the quality of that holster, okay? Because most guys they're just getting, I don't know, $10-$20 Amazon special, okay? Are they the worst? I mean, they're some of them are okay. Some of them are okay. But if you actually get equipment that was designed by people who understand holsters, that's a huge kind of a game changer, right? Because a lot of people copy them, right? Like We the People copies them, the Chinese sellers copy them, but they don't understand why they did it, right? So they don't always implement it correctly. Okay, so you throw out some names like T-Rex Arms and Tier One Concealment and Works. Those are also guys who they make really good holsters. Okay, so getting good quality equipment, that is definitely a big part of it, and getting good training too, because if you don't really have good training, sometimes it's very easy to get into building bad habits, right? And when you start building bad habits, it's hard to undo those bad habits. Yeah. Um, so I think that's a really good place for people to start, and knowing who to reach out and ask. Yeah, I think that you're an excellent resource, especially for people in the St. Paul area. And I'm not too bad of a resource if you're an NC, but a lot of people they message me all the time on social media, and I'm more than happy to answer questions on social media.
Yeah, and one thing I want to say is that if you're scared of shooting your nuts, then carry a double action slash single action handgun, because when you holster your gun, you could actually put your thumb on the hammer to, just in case if your trigger got caught on something, the trigger cannot go back if you're pressing down on the hammer. So if you're not comfortable reholstering your gun from appendix, then try carrying a double action handgun, double action, single action handgun, and then it will make you feel more comfortable. In my opinion, it should help you feel more comfortable.
I think that's excellent advice. For my mindset, the way I work, I have a lot of guns that I regret, and I like, okay, for example, when I got into concealed carry. I started with like a Sig Sauer, a Sig Pro SP 2022, and then I went to Springfield XD, and then I went to Smith and Wesson M&P, and I never really liked them. And then I got my Glock. I'm like, I didn't want Glocks because everybody's got them, right? Then I got it, and I was like, oh, this is really good. This is why everybody likes Glocks, right? And I kind of regret wasting all my time on all those other guns. So, in if you really, really want to, yeah, I think what you're saying is good. That being able to hold your hand over that hammer. Otherwise, I would say just get a Glock 19, just do 1,000 reps, right?
Yep.
Make sure the gun is clear, and then just holster the gun.
Yep.
And if you can do that like 100 times, 500 times, right, and you never get a click, then you're fine.
Yep.
Okay. The other thing is that as you're holstering, the really skilled guys. Oh, sorry. There's different levels of skills, but the very safety conscious but highly skilled guys, I see what they do is they lean back so that way as they're coming in, that angle is not pointing at their body. Okay.
Yep.
If you watch like Lucas from TRX Arms, he reholsters 100 miles an hour, and that makes me cringe, right? Because there's no reason to reholster that fast. There's always that slight chance that there's if you're wearing like a rain jacket, we've got like that drawstring on the side. There's always a chance that like that drawstring or something from your clothing gets in there, and that might engage that trigger. So I always tell my students that we don't reholster quickly. Okay, we reholster carefully. Yep. Okay, so yeah, get comfortable with your equipment. If you want to learn appendix, because it is crazy fast and it can be very comfortable when done correctly, just reholster. Do this 100, 500 times and just get very comfortable with that motion. You can lean back, and as you're holstering, that way the gun actually never points at your body. And then, if you can do that like 500 times and you never get a click from that trigger, that's
Yep.
then you're good. Um, Pretty much all the more performance oriented shooters, they're carrying appendix. I don't really see that many performance oriented guys carrying three o'clock anymore in terms of concealed carry.
Yep.
Yeah, competition, yeah, they're all carrying 3 o'clock. But in terms of concealed carry, most everybody who knows what they're talking about is doing appendix.
Yes. All right. Sounds good, man. So yeah, man. I think that's a wrap, man. We covered a lot of things tonight. So I guess I'm we're gonna end it here. But before I end this podcast, where can people find more about you? And do you have any upcoming classes that you're planning to teach? Where can people find you for those people that is interested?
Yeah. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram under Instructor Kang. Our website is mountaintribedevelopment.com. It's kind of a mouthful, but you can also go to instructorkang.com. It'll redirect you to mountaintribedevelopment.com. No spaces, dashes, or anything, just mountaintribedevelopment.com. In terms of classes, we teach a lot of fun classes. Um, just like intro handgun and concealed carry, that's kind of our bread and butter. A lot of high level instructors, they don't like teaching that, but I enjoy introducing new shooters to shooting concepts and firearm safety. In terms of classes that we teach, we do rifle classes, pistol classes, and starting to get into the shotgun stuff. And then sometimes we'll do the long range stuff for fun. Our range, our private range, goes out to about like 300 yards right now, which is not that far, but it's a decent place for people to start out with. Um, in terms of scheduling, we like to schedule based on demand. So we have a system where, if you've got a friend, so essentially two people, we'll schedule a class for you and we'll put it on the books. So yeah, that's the best way to reach out to us.
Yeah, and I will also put the link in the description. Yeah, when I edit this podcast. So that way people could just easily click on it and find you. So yeah, man. Pretty much that is it. Well, I appreciate you taking your time and to talk to me. And I appreciate that you being the first guest ever, man. And this is my first time doing a podcast. So for those who knows a lot about podcasts, if there's something that I could improve, please let me know. Because I'm always looking way to improve. And I apologize if I didn't do a good job as a host because, like I said, this is my first time.
Nah, you did
Never,
good.
I
You did
never
good.
had any practice of doing podcasts, and so yeah, just if you think that there's things that you would like me to improve on, just write it down, and then I will work on it. So yeah, pretty much that's it, man. So any last thing you want to say before we end this?
No, not too much. Have a good time, have fun, but be safe. And if you want to get serious, get some training.
All right.
And you don't know what you don't know, so don't be cocky, but be open to learning new things and really expanding your skill set.
All right, sounds good, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on tonight.
Of
Have a good
course.
night.
Thanks for having me.
Have
All
a good
right.
night, bro.